Hey everyone! Tonight we are stepping back into a world where the lines between a high-stakes sporting event, a religious revival, and a lethal military drill are so blurred they practically don't exist. Imagine you are standing on the sun-baked limestone of a great plaza, the air thick with the scent of copal incense and the distant rhythmic thumping of a huejotl drum. You aren't here for a conquest, and you aren't here to claim land.
You're here
because the universe requires a very specific kind of maintenance, and your pulse is the currency. It's the height of the Aztec Empire, and you've just been invited to a flower war, or xochiyaoyotl. You probably wouldn't survive this, mostly because your modern cardio is no match for a warrior who's been sprinting up pyramid steps since he was 5. But we're going to try anyway. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so go ahead and post your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the heat radiating off the whitewashed walls of Tenochtitlan as you walk toward the Palace of Moctezuma. This isn't the chaotic, desperate mobilization of a city under siege. Instead, there's a strange, orderly hum to the proceedings. You see messengers titillantly darting through the crowds, their tilma cloaks fluttering behind them. One of them stops before you, presenting a bundle of scented tobacco and high-quality textiles. In the world of the Triple Alliance, this isn't a gift. It's a formal save-the-date for a massacre. You've been summoned to participate in the most prestigious and terrifying training exercise in human history. The concept of the Flower War is one that often boggles the modern mind. We are used to wars of total destruction, of borders moving and flags changing. But as you look around the armory, you realize that the goal here is fundamentally different. Historians have noted that the Flower Wars were essentially pre-arranged battles between the Aztec Triple Alliance and their neighbors, most notably the Tlaxcalans. These weren't spontaneous outbursts of violence. They were scheduled. It's like a deadly version of a scrimmage match, where the objective isn't to kill the enemy, but to capture them with grace and skill. You reach out and touch the edge of a xochiyaoyotl, the iconic wooden sword embedded with razor-sharp volcanic glass. You notice it isn't designed for a killing thrust. It's designed to maim, to disable the legs, to ensure that the man you are fighting stays alive long enough to be hauled back to the city. There's a quirky, almost polite fringe tidbit to this. During these diplomatic invitations to war, the opposing sides would often exchange gifts of food and luxury goods before they started trying to bash each other's heads in. It's the ultimate good game before the game even begins. As you prepare, you hear the older warriors whispering about the necessity of this ritual. They speak of a great famine that struck the Valley of Mexico in the mid-1450s. The priests concluded that the gods were hungry, and the only way to satisfy them and to keep the soldiers' skills from rusting during times of peace was to establish a permanent state of controlled conflict. Historians still argue whether the Flower Wars were a genuine religious necessity or a brilliant piece of psychological warfare designed to slowly bleed rivals dry without the expense of a full-scale occupation. You start to dress, and the weight of the cotton armor, the xochiyaoyotl, feels heavy on your shoulders. It's soaked in brine to make it tough, a precursor to modern Kevlar. You aren't just a soldier, you are a performer in a cosmic play. You see the younger boys, the Tlaxcala students, watching you with a mix of awe and terror. They know that for them, the Flower War is the only way up. In a society where you are born into your station, the only social elevator is the number of captives you can take on the field of flowers. The air in the city is electric. This isn't the somber mood of a funeral. It's the high-voltage energy of a championship final. You see the feathered banners being hoisted, each one representing a different ward or kalpuli. You're part of a machine that is constantly being calibrated. The Flower War ensures that when a real war of conquest breaks out, your commanders aren't guessing. They know exactly how you move, how you react to pressure, and how long you can swing that obsidian blade before your muscles give out. You notice that even the merchants, the pochteca, are involved. Moving through the ranks to trade for the specialized gear you'll need, there's an entire economy built around this readiness. You aren't just preparing for a fight, you're preparing for a demonstration of empire. The flower in the name isn't a reference to the beauty of the landscape, though the battlefields were often in lush valleys. No, the flowers are the warriors themselves, and the falling of the flowers is the poetic way the Aztecs describe the death and capture of the elite. You take a sip of water, feeling the cool liquid hit the back of your throat, knowing it might be the last bit of peace you have for days. You think about the enemy. The Tlaxcalans are currently doing the exact same thing, just a few dozen miles away. They aren't strangers. In many cases, the noble families on both sides are distantly related. They speak the same language, worship similar gods, and follow the same rules of engagement. It's a fratricidal dance that keeps everyone's blades sharp. As you march out of the city, the sound of thousands of sandals hitting the earth creates a rhythmic trance. You pass the great temple, the Templo Mayor, where the blue and red shrines tower over the valley. You know that if you succeed, you'll return to these steps as a hero, draped in the skins of your accomplishments. If you fail, you'll still end up at the temple, just in a much more passive capacity. The sun is beginning to climb higher, casting long shadows across the causeway. You look at your hands, already calloused from weeks of practice drills. This isn't just about strength, it's about the art of the capture. You've been taught how to read an opponent's balance, how to wait for the moment they overextend, and how to use the flat of your weapon to stun rather than the edge to sever. It's a dance of high-stakes martial arts played out on a scale that would dwarf any modern stadium. You feel a sense of strange, calm destiny. In the Aztec mind, there is no if or why, only the now. The Flower War is the ultimate expression of this philosophy. It is a war that produces nothing but readiness, yet it is the most important war you will ever fight. You aren't fighting for land, for gold, or for spite. You are fighting to prove that the heart of the empire is still beating, and that the flowers of its youth are still in full bloom. You take one last look at the shimmering lake surrounding the city before the tree line swallows the path, leading you toward the designated sacred ground where the games are about to begin. The march continues, and as the urban sprawl of Tenochtitlan fades into the lush, temperate greenery of the highlands, you find yourself obsessing over your kit. In a flower war, your equipment is a direct reflection of your rank, and more importantly, your survival. You reach back to adjust the straps of your xochiyaoyotl. This isn't just a shirt. It's a sophisticated piece of engineering made of unspun cotton, quilted between two layers of cloth and soaked in a heavy salt brine. Once it dries, it becomes a stiff, impact-resistant vest that can turn away an obsidian blade or a flint-tipped arrow. It's heavy, smelling faintly of salt and old sweat, and it reminds you that while this is a ritual war, the bruises you'll walk away with will be very real. You probably wouldn't enjoy the fashion of it. Today it's essentially wearing a heavy, salty moving blanket in the humid sun butt here. It's the difference between a shallow cut and a trip to the afterlife. You stop by a stream to sharpen your xochiyaoyotl one last time. You hold the wooden paddle, carved from high-quality oak, and examine the grooves along the edges. You have a small pouch of extra obsidian flakes and a bit of resin harvested from pine trees. One of the most fascinating and frankly terrifying things about Aztec weaponry is the sheer sharpness of these blades. Historians have documented Spanish accounts claiming a xochiyaoyotl could decapitate a horse in a single blow, though in a flower war, that's exactly the kind of overkill you're trying to avoid. You carefully press a new flake into a gap in the resin. It's sharper than a modern steel scalpel, and it glitters with a dark, oily sheen in the dappled sunlight. A quirky tidbit you might not know is that the Aztecs actually used a form of tactical makeup. You apply thick streaks of black and yellow pigment to your face, not just for the intimidation factor, but to reduce the sun's glare off your cheekbones, much like a modern football player. It also serves as a sort of psychological uniform. When you see a man with those specific markings, you know he's from your kalpuli, your neighborhood unit. Between empires, these visual cues were vital. In the heat of a flower war, where hundreds of men are swirling in a chaotic dance of feathers and dust, you need to know who is a brother and who is a prize to be captured. You look at your shield, the xochiyaoyotl. It's a circular work of art, woven from sturdy reeds and backed with heavy leather, decorated with intricate featherwork. The feathers aren't just for show, they signify your past achievements. You've even noticed a few veteran warriors whose shields are so heavy with trophy feathers, they look like they might take flight. However, historians still argue whether these elaborate costumes were a hindrance or a strategic advantage. Some suggest the bright colors and massive back banners, the pamadal, were designed to make the warriors look larger and more supernatural, effectively blinding the opponent with a sensory overload of color and movement before the first blow was even struck. As you walk, you check your xochiyaoyotl, the spare It's a simple lever that allows you to launch a dart with incredible velocity. In a standard war of conquest, you'd be aiming for the chest. Here, in the xochiyaoyotls, the veterans tell you to aim for the legs. You want to flour your opponent to make him bleed just enough that he can't run, but not so much that he loses his value to the gods. It's a delicate, morbid balance. You realize that your entire training has been a lesson in restraint. To kill your enemy is a failure of technique. To bring him home in one piece is the ultimate mark of a master. You pass a group of porters carrying large jars of xochiyaoyotl, the fermented agave drink we now know as pulque. You won't be touching that until the battle is over, of course. For now, you chew on a piece of dried venison and a handful of parched corn. The diet of a warrior on the move is surprisingly lean and efficient. You think back to the stories of the famine wars and realize that this entire ritual is built on the idea of scarcity. You are training to be a predator that can survive on very little. Moving quickly through the mountains to strike when the flowers are in bloom, the road begins to steepen as you approach the field of the burnt earth, a designated neutral zone between the Triple Alliance and the Tlaxcalan territories. You see the scouts, the quimictin or mice, returning from the front. They move silently, their skin painted to blend into the shadows of the maguey plants. They report that the enemy is already there, setting up their own pavilions. There's no sense of dread in their voices, only a professional readiness. It's like hearing the report of a rival team's starting lineup. You know their names, you know their fighting styles, and you might even have shared a ceremonial meal with their cousins last year. You adjust your sandals, the cacti made of maguey fiber. They're starting to fray from the rocky path, and you make a mental note to trade for a sturdier pair once you VA secured a captive. In this world, captives are the ultimate currency. 1 captive allows you to wear certain feathers, 2 allows you to wear a specific style of tunic, 4 makes you a jaguar or eagle warrior. You are currently looking at your plain, unadorned gear and feeling the weight of your lower status. The flower war is your chance to literally dress for the job you want. There's a strange moment of stillness as the column stops. You can hear the wind whistling through the pines. You think about the crocodile dung sunscreen from the old stories, thankfully. You aren't using that today, but the grease UV rubbed on your limbs to make them harder to grab is nearly as pungent. It's a practical trick. A slippery opponent is much harder to wrestle to the ground. You realize that every single part of your preparation, from the salt in your armor to the oil on your skin, is a specialized tool for this specific, ritualized form of combat. As you look toward the horizon, you see the first glint of the Tlaxcalan banners. They are bright orange and white, clashing against the deep green of the valley. Your heart begins to race, but you force your breathing to stay slow and rhythmic, just as the priests taught you. You aren't just a man anymore. You are a component of the Empire's immune system. The flower war is the heartbeat that keeps the military body from going soft. You grip your xochiyaoyotl tighter, feeling the cool wood against your palm, and prepare to step into the clearing where the past and the present are about to collide in a spray of color and obsidian. As you crest the final ridge overlooking the valley of the flower war, the sheer political strangeness of this situation begins to settle in. You aren't here because the Tlaxcalans stole your land, and you aren't here to annex their city. In fact, if you actually succeeded in wiping them out, your own emperors would be furious. You're witnessing the politics of perpetual conflict, a strategic paradox that keeps the Aztec machine humming. To the Triple Alliance, a fully conquered enemy is a silent one, but a semi-independent hostile neighbor is a loud ringing bell that keeps your soldiers from getting fat and lazy on tribute. You realize that you are a participant in a controlled burnifier, meant to clear out the brush without consuming the forest. You watch as your commanders meet with the opposing side's leaders under a neutral canopy. It looks more like a high-stakes board meeting than a prelude to a massacre. Historians have noted that the flower wars were often used as a soft power demonstration. By inviting the leaders of rebellious or wavering provinces to sit on the sidelines and watch these battles, the Aztecs were essentially saying, "Look at how well-trained our boys are. Do you really want to be the ones we fight for, real?" It's a bit like a modern superpower conducting massive naval drills right off the coast of a rivalet. It's technically a practice, but the message is crystal clear. One quirky fringe tidbit about these political arrangements is that the Aztecs sometimes provided the Tlaxcalans with weapons and food if they were running low. Imagine that for a second. You're about to fight someone to the death, but you hand them a sandwich and a fresh sword first, because it wouldn't be a fair or useful exercise if they were too weak to resist. It's the ultimate expression of the Aztec obsession with balance. If the Tlaxcalans are too weak, the training value drops to 0. You need them to be at their best so that you can be at your best. It's a symbiotic relationship written in blood. Historians still argue whether this was a sustainable long-term strategy or a massive tactical blunder that eventually handed the Spanish an army of bitter, battle-hardened allies. Looking at it through your eyes, standing in the dust of the valley, it feels like a brilliant piece of statecraft. By keeping the Tlaxcalans in a state of permanent managed war, you've created a permanent training ground. Your officers aren't learning tactics from bark paper scrolls in a classroom. They're learning them by dodging very real obsidian blades. You are the elite, the tip of the spear, and you are being sharpened on the whetstone of a rival who has nowhere else to go. The sun catches the gold jewelry of the nobles as they laugh together before the horns blow. It's a jarring sight. You've probably seen weirder things, like that time you saw a priest try to explain a solar eclipse using nothing but a bowl of water and some cacao beans. But this takes the cake. These men will be trying to kidnap each other in an hour, but right now, they're discussing the quality of this year's maize harvest. This political theater ensures that the war remains pure, by keeping the stakes limited to prestige and captives, rather than territory and total annihilation. The empires create a sustainable loop of military readiness. You notice the presence of the Pochteka, the elite merchants who also double as spies. They are weaving through the camps, taking mental notes of who looks tired, whose equipment is fraying, and which Tlaxcala noble seems to be losing his nerve. The flower war isn't just a physical test, it's an intelligence-scoring mission. Every swing of your xochiyaoyotl is data. The empire is a living organism, and this valley is its nervous system, testing its reflexes and checking for any signs of weakness in the surrounding cells. You think about your home in Tenochtitlan, the floating gardens, and the bustling markets. The only reason those places remain peaceful and prosperous is because the threat of your violence is constant and visible. The flower war is the advertisement for that threat. It's a psychological tool that tells every vassal state that the Triple Alliance is always ready, always practiced, and always hungry. You aren't just fighting for the gods, you're fighting for the stability of the entire Mesoamerican world order. There's a cynical side to this too. You realize that by focusing all your military energy on these ritualized wars, you're also preventing your own generals from getting bored and plotting a coup against the emperor. It's hard to plan a rebellion when you're constantly being sent to the front to prove your worth and capture new status symbols. The flower war serves as a pressure valve for the ambitious. If you want power, you don't take it from the palace. You take it from the battlefield, one captive at a time. It channels the aggressive energy of the nobility into a ritual that serves the state rather than threatening it. As the meeting under the canopy breaks up, the atmosphere shifts instantly. The polite smiles vanish, replaced by the grim, focused masks of warriors. The political phase is over. The kinetic phase is beginning. You feel the shift in your own gut, the transition from being a piece of a political puzzle to being a weapon in a soldier's hand. You grip the handle of your shield, feeling the cool leather. You are the instrument of this perpetual conflict, the physical manifestation of a policy that says to live is to fight. You look out at the field once more, seeing the dust begin to rise as the units move into their starting positions. It's a beautiful, terrifying sight. The feathers of thousands of warriors shimmer like a field of actual flowers swaying in the wind. But these flowers have teeth. You are part of a grand, violent tradition that has kept your people at the top of the food chain for generations. Between these two empires, there is no room for peace, only for readiness. And as the first shell horn blasts, echoing off the canyon walls, you realize that the politics are finally silent, and the bloom is about to begin. As you descend from the ridge and step onto the designated battlefield, the ground beneath your sandals feels different, preternaturally flat, and suspiciously clear of the thick scrub that chokes the surrounding hills. This is the Xochiyaoyotl, the land of the eagles, a space specifically curated for the art of war. Unlike a standard campaign where you might be fighting through a swamp or up a treacherous mountain pass, the flower war takes place on a level playing field. It is a stage, a massive open-air theater where every movement is visible to the gods and the generals. You realize that the very landscape has been modified over decades of repeated skirmishes. The rocks have been cleared, and the trees have been thinned to ensure that the spectacle is unobscured by something as mundane as a forest. You take your position in the line, feeling the heat of the men on either side of you. The air is thick with a scent you've come to associate with these sacred grounds. A mix of crushed marigolds, damp earth, and the metallic tang of drying blood from the previous day's skirmishes. There's a mainstream historical fact that often gets lost in the barbaric narrative. These battlefields were often located in specific neutral zones between city-states, such as the plains of Tlaxcala or Cholula. These weren't random locations. They were sacred geographies where the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds was considered thin. By fighting here, you aren't just engaging in a drill. You are participating in a cosmic ritual intended to keep the sun moving across the sky. A quirky fringe tidbit that might make you chuckle if you are currently staring down a wall of angry Tlaxcalans. The presence of refreshment stands, well, not exactly stands, but during the breaks in these ritualized battles, it wasn't uncommon for vendors to move along the periphery, and sometimes even between the lines, offering water and snacks. It's the ultimate high-stakes halftime. You probably would unsurvive the transition from eating a quick tamale to being tackled by a man in a jaguar suit. But for the Aztec warrior, this blend of the mundane and the murderous was just another Tuesday. You watch as the priests move through the ranks, splashing the ground with sacred water and chanting to Huitzilopochtli. Historians still argue whether the Flower War was truly a limited conflict or if that is a post-conquest romanticization. Some evidence suggests that, while the goals were ritualistic, the body counts could be staggering, sometimes rivaling real wars in their sheer lethality. As you look at the sharp obsidian teeth of the enemy's weapons glinting in the sun, it certainly feels real enough. The Tlaxcalans across the field aren't just shadows, they are individuals you can see clearly. You can see the sweat on their brows and the determination in their eyes. There are no walls to hide behind here, no trenches to dig. It's a pure test of skill, courage, and conditioning. The sheer scale of the stage is overwhelming. It's miles of open ground, meticulously maintained so that the heavy infantry can move in perfect synchronization. You notice how the ground is divided by small marker stones or painted posts that help the commanders keep their formations aligned. It's like a massive, lethal chessboard. If you wander too far to the left, you break the line. If you push too far forward, you risk being isolated and captured before your brothers can reach you. The environment itself dictates the strategy. Stay tight, stay rhythmic, and wait for the enemy to lose their footing on the sacred dust. You feel the vibrations in the ground as the Tlaxcalan drummers begin their counter rhythm. It's a sonic war before the physical one even starts. The sound bounces off the surrounding mountains, creating a disorienting echo that makes it feel like the very earth is screaming. You tighten your grip on your Kimali shield, the light catching the intricate patterns of duck feathers and gold leaf. You aren't just a soldier. You are an ornament of the state, a flower that has been planted in this specific soil to be harvested by the gods. The psychological pressure of being on stage is immense. Every slip, every flinch, and every moment of cowardice will be seen by the thousands of eyes watching from the hillsides. There's a strange sense of cleanliness to this battlefield. Unlike the gritty, muddy slog of a siege, the Flower War is high contrast. The white cotton of the armor, the brilliant yellows and greens of the feathers, and the deep black of the obsidian create a visual palette that is almost too beautiful for what is about to happen. You realize that this aesthetic perfection is part of the readiness. By making the war a beautiful, curated event, the Empire ensures that its people don't fear it, they crave the glory of participating in it. It's a masterclass in propaganda written in the layout of the land itself. As the sun reaches its zenith, the shadows beneath your feet disappear. This is the moment, the sacred noon, when the sun is at its strongest and the gods are most expectant. You look at your commander, an eagle warrior whose helmet is a terrifyingly realistic raptor's head. He raises a conch shell to his lips, and the sound it produces is low, haunting, and ancient. It is the signal that the performance is beginning. You aren't just moving onto a field. You are stepping into a machine designed to grind human experience into military excellence. You start to move forward, not in a run, but in a measured, intimidating stomp. The sound of thousands of feet hitting the curated earth of the Cutlali is like a heartbeat. You think back to those crocodile dung stories. Maybe that smell would have been a welcome distraction from the sheer adrenaline coursing through you now. Your vision narrows. The mountains, the priests, and the spectators fade away until there is only the man in front of you, the edge of your blade, and the dusty stage where you must prove that the empire is still worthy of the sun's light. The distance between the two lines closes. 50 yards? 30. You can hear the individual shouts of the Tlaxcalan nobles, challenging you, calling out their lineage and their past victories. This is the unlocking of the past, bringing the ancient traditions of their ancestors into the living present. You take a final deep breath of the scented air, plant your feet firmly on the sacred ground, and prepare to show the world why the flowers of Tenochtitlan are the deadliest in the valley. As the two lines of warriors finally close the distance, you realize that you aren't just fighting for your life, you're fighting for your resume. In Tenochtitlan, the social ladder of the xochiyaoyotl is the only hierarchy that truly matters for a man of your age. You look to your left and see a young man, barely 20, wearing the plain, undyed maguey fibers of a machehuli or commoner. If he manages to snatch a single captive today, he'll earn the right to wear decorated cotton. If he takes two, he gets the orange-bordered tunic. It's a literal dress for success system where your wardrobe is gated by your combat stats. You probably wouldn't survive a performance review where human kidnapping was a key performance indicator. But in the world of the Triple Alliance, this is how you move from the slums to the stone palaces. The chaos erupts around you, but it's a strangely disciplined sort of madness. You see a veteran warrior, a shaved one with his hair tied in a tall topknot with red ribbon, move with the grace of a dancer. He doesn't swing his xochiyaoyotl like a club. He uses it to hook the back of an opponent's knee. This is a mainstream historical fact that defines the Aztec military. Social mobility was almost entirely dependent on the capture of live enemies. To kill a man on the field was often seen as a waste of merit. You're rewatching the social structure of an entire empire being negotiated in real time through wrestling matches and obsidian strikes. A quirky fringe tidbit about this social ladder is that the scorekeeping was incredibly bureaucratic. There were official witnesses, often elderly veterans or specialized priests whose entire job was to watch the melee and verify who actually made the capture. You couldn't just claim you caught a Tlaxcalan noble. You needed a receipt in the form of multiple witnesses who saw you pull the man down and tie his hands. It's like a deadly version of a referee checking the replay in a football game. You find yourself glancing around even as you dodge a spear, wondering if the judges are seeing your footwork. It adds a layer of performance anxiety to the already high-stakes environment of a literal war zone. Historians still argue whether this meritocratic system was truly open to everyone, or if it was rigged in favor of the nobility. While a commoner could technically rise to the rank of an eagle or jaguar warrior, some scholars suggest that the sons of nobles were given better equipment, better positions in the line, and more opportunities to finish off a capture that had already been softened up by their subordinates. Standing here watching a young noble in a stunning feathered suit receive help from 3 of his family's retainers to secure a single Tlaxcalan, you start to see the cracks in the pull yourself up by your own sandals narrative. Even so, the hope of upward mobility is a powerful drug that keeps every man in this line pushing forward. You focus on a Tlaxcalan warrior directly in front of you. He's wearing a basic quilted vest, meaning he's likely in the same social boat as you, hungry for a promotion. This is the sparring that maintains empires. If you capture him, you might finally get that feathered headpiece you've been eyeing in the market. If he captures you, he gets the promotion, and you get a one-way ticket to the altar. The stakes create a level of focus that no training camp could ever replicate. Your muscles scream as you parry a blow with your chaimali, the impact vibrating through your teeth. You realize that the Flower War is essentially a massive national-scale certification exam. The hierarchy isn't just about clothes, though. It's about food, land, and the right to sit in the presence of the emperor. A warrior with 4 captures is exempted from paying certain taxes and is allowed to drink pulque in publica. Massive perk in a society that was surprisingly prohibition era about alcohol for the lower classes. You think about that cold bowl of fermented agave waiting at the end of this social climb and find a fresh burst of energy. Between empires, these rewards ensured that the military was never short on volunteers. Why stay a farmer when you could be a celebrity? You notice how the veterans treat the unproven youths. They don't protect them, they watch them. They are looking for the ones who have the xochiyaoyotl, the divine spark of a true warrior. The Flower War filters out the weak and the unlucky. ensuring that the middle management of the Aztec army is composed entirely of men who have looked death in the face and come home with a trophy. This constant performance review keeps the imperial bureaucracy from becoming stagnant. You aren't just fighting an enemy, you're recompeting with the man next to you for the limited promotions available in this year's harvest. The pressure of the social ladder also leads to some intense psychological warfare. You hear warriors shouting their capture count at their opponents. "I have taken 3 from your city, you will be my 4th. It's the ultimate trash talk, designed to remind the enemy that they aren't just fighting a man, but a career trajectory. You realize that the Flower War is a machine that turns human ambition into military readiness by tying every luxury and right to combat performance. The Aztecs ensured that their flowers were the most motivated soldiers in the known world. As you scramble for a grip on your opponent's arm, you feel the dust of the sacred field clogging your throat. You're exhausted, but the sight of a jaguar warrior nearby, draped in the actual skin of a feline, reminds you of what's possible. He moves with a terrifying confidence, his status protecting him as much as his armor. He has nothing left to prove, yet he fights with a ferocity that suggests he wants to keep his spot at the top. The social ladder is steep, and it is slippery with more than just oil and sweat. You finally manage to sweep your opponent's leg, sending him tumbling into the dirt. As you drop your weight onto him, reaching for the hemp cord at your belt. You aren't thinking about the readiness of empires or a cosmic balance, you're thinking about that orange-bordered tunic. You were thinking about the look on your neighbor's face when you walk back into your ward with a captive in tow. The Flower War has done its job. It has turned a terrifying ordeal into a career opportunity. And as you cinch the knot around your captive's wrists, you feel yourself moving one rung higher on the ladder of the gods. With your first captive secured and handed off to the rearguard porters, you turn back to the fray, but you immediately notice a change in the atmosphere. This isn't a chaotic brawl where anything goes. You are now navigating the ritualized rules of engagement. In a Flower War, there is a strict, almost chivalrous etiquette that governs every strike. You see a Tlaxcalan warrior trip over a loose stone, his xochiyaoyotl spinning out of reach. In a real war of conquest, you'd finish him where he lies. Here, you pause. You wait for him to stand and reclaim his weapon. To attack an unarmed man, or someone who has clearly lost their footing, is more than just a foulet. A social death sentence. You'd be mocked in the communal houses for weeks, branded a coward who couldn't take a man at his best. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The Flower Wars were governed by a set of gentlemen's agreements that would seem alien to a modern soldier. There were agreed-upon start times, designated boundaries, and specific types of weapons allowed. Historians have compared it to a massive lethal tournament. You aren't just trying to win, you are trying to win correctly. The focus is on individual prowess and the beauty of the technique. You're essentially a martial artist performing for an audience of gods and peers, and every move you make must adhere to the traditional script of the A quirky fringe tidbit that adds to this sense of lethal politeness is the use of verbal cues. It was uncommon for warriors to compliment each other on a particularly well-executed parry, or a clever feint. Well-struck brother might be shouted just seconds before you try to break that same brother's ribs. There's even evidence that if a particularly famous or noble warrior was captured, his captor might treat him with extreme deference, sharing a final meal or a drink of water as they marched back to the city. It's a bizarre, paradoxical world where you show the most respect to the person you are about to hand over to the sacrificial stone. Historians still argue whether these rules were actually followed in the heat of battle, or if they were an idealized version written down after the fact by nostalgic elders. When you're in the thick of it, with the copper smell of blood in the air and the roar of the crowd in your ears, sticking to the etiquette is incredibly difficult. You see a younger warrior, panicked by a Tlaxcalan charge, swing wildly and kill an opponent with a direct blow to the throat. The silence that follows from his own unit is chilling. He hasn't won a victory, he's committed a blunder, he's broken the flower, and the shame on his face is more palpable than his fear of the enemy. You move into a defensive stance, your chamali raised. You are looking for a specific kind of engagement, a one-on duel. The Flower War discourages ganging up. If you see 2 of your comrades wrestling with one Tlaxcalan, you move past them to find your own dance partner. This ensures that the training remains pure. If you only ever win by outnumbering the enemy, you never actually learn how to fight. The empires use these rules to ensure that every single soldier is a self-contained unit of destruction. It's a quality control mechanism disguised as a religious ritual. You notice the heralds moving along the edges of the combat zone. These men carry tall, feathered staffs and wear distinctive yellow tunics. They are the umpires of the apocalypse. If the fighting gets too messy, or if one side pushes into an illegal zone, they blow on bone whistles to reset the lines. It's a jarring reminder that this is a curated experience. You probably would unsurvive a modern war where the referee blows a whistle right as you about to take the objective. But here, it's the only way to keep the training ground from turning into a chaotic, unproductive slaughter. The etiquette extends even to the way you talk to the enemy. There is a specific battle language, a formal way of challenging someone that involves reciting your lineage and the names of the gods you serve. It's not just "I'm going to get you," it's a legalistic declaration of intent. This ritualized communication serves a practical purpose. It prevents the war from becoming personal. If you hate your enemy, you might kill them out of spite. If you respect them as a fellow performer in a sacred rite, you're more likely to follow the rules and secure the live captive the empire needs. As the sun begins its slow descent, the rules shift again. There is an unspoken agreement about the end of the day you don't pursue a retreating enemy into the dark. When the conch shells signal the end of the session, the violence stops almost instantly. You see men who were trying to strangle each other moments ago simply let go, wipe the sweat from their eyes, and begin the long walk back to their respective camps. It's a display of discipline that would make a modern drill sergeant weep with joy. This level of control is exactly what the Triple Alliance wants to cultivate in its ranks. You stand there, chest heaving, watching the Tlaxcalan line reform in the distance. Your knuckles are bruised and your salt-cured armor is caked with dust, but you followed the code. You haven't taken a cheap shot, and you haven't shamed your ancestors. You realize that the rules of engagement are what turn a massacre into a school. By restricting how you can fight, the Empire forces you to become more creative, more agile, and more resilient. You aren't just a thug with a club. You are a practitioner of the most sophisticated and rule-bound form of warfare the world has ever seen. You look down at your hands, still shaking slightly from the adrenaline. The etiquette of the flower war is a heavy burden, but it's what separates the civilized empires from the barbarians of the outer wastes. As you turn to follow your unit back to the pavilion, you feel a strange sense of pride. You've survived another day on the sacred field, and you've done it with the grace that the gods demand. The flowers have been picked, the rules have been honored, and the military readiness of the Empire remains as sharp as the obsidian edge of your blade. As the immediate adrenaline of the first skirmish cools, you begin to notice the massive, invisible machine humming behind the front lines. The logistics of a controlled war. While you were busy worrying about obsidian, blades, and social promotions, thousands of people were ensuring you didn't starve in this designated wasteland. A flower war isn't just a test for the warriors, it's a stress test for the imperial supply chain. You look back toward the staging area and see a literal mountain of woven baskets and ceramic jars. This is a mainstream historical fact that often surprises people. The Aztec Empire was a logistical titan. They didn't have pack animals or the wheel for transport, meaning every single tortilla, every liter of water, and every spare obsidian flake had to be carried on the backs of human porters, known as tlamams. You watch a line of these porters arriving from the direction of the capital. Each man carries a load of about 60 pounds, secured by a mecapola tumpline across the forehead. It's backbreaking work, and it's the only reason you can afford to play this game of flowers. Between empires, the ability to project force depended entirely on how many calories you could move through the mountains. To keep an army of 10,000 warriors fed for a week-long flower war, you need a staggering amount of maize. You probably wouldn't survive a day as a porter. It's a job that requires a different kind of readiness, one built on endurance and a neck of literal stone. A quirky fringe tidbit about this logistics nightmare involves the standardization of rations. The Aztecs were surprisingly modern in their approach to military food. You receive your daily allotment, a stack of Tlaxcala tortillas that have been specially toasted to last longer without molding, and a pouch of panolia ground maize powder that you mix with water to create a high-energy power drink. It's essentially the world's first MRE. Some accounts even mention that the Aztecs used a specific type of algae harvested from Lake Texcoco called Tecatlatel spirulina, which was dried into cakes. It's a superfood that provided the dense protein needed. To keep your muscles from wasting away during a week of high-intensity wrestling, historians still argue whether the logistical burden of the flower wars was a strategic drain or a deliberate economic stimulus for the empire. By forcing the various calpulli to produce and transport these massive surpluses, the central government was essentially training the entire civilian population for a total war scenario. If you can feed an army during a fake war in the mountains of Tlaxcala, you can feed an army during a real invasion of the Mixtec highlands. You realize that the porters are just as much a part of the readiness as you are. They are learning the routes, the water sources, and the timing required to keep the empire's heart beating. You see a group of specialized craftsmen, the weapon medics, working near the commander's pavilion. They aren't fixing tupel, they're fixing tools. They have crates of precious obsidian shards and pots of boiling resin. If your xochiyaoyotl loses a tooth in a Tlaxcalan shield, you don't throw it away. You run it back to these guys. They can strip and reset a blade in minutes. This level of field maintenance is what allows the flower war to continue day after day. It's a cycle of destruction and repair that ensures the equipment is as battle-tested as the men wielding it. The logistics also extend to the harvest itself. You watch the captive trains being organized. The men you captured aren't just thrown into a pit. They are cataloged. Their names, their origins, and the names of their captors are recorded by scribes using pictorial codices. This data is vital for the social ladder we talked about earlier. Without the bureaucracy of the logistics team, your heroic deeds would be forgotten in the dust. You see a scribe meticulously painting a glyph representing a Tlaxcalan noble's feathered headdress next to a symbol for your neighborhood. It's the imperial accounting of glory. There's also the matter of water. In the high, dry valleys where these wars are fought, finding a reliable spring is more important than finding an enemy. You notice that the camp is positioned carefully near a seasonal stream, and the porters are constantly running water relays to keep the jars full. You think back to the crocodile dung sunscreen at least that wouldn't have required a gallon of water to wash off. Here, every drop is a precious resource that has to be managed with extreme precision. The flower cannot bloom without water, and the logistics team are the gardeners of this lethal landscape. You take a moment to appreciate the sheer silence of this logistical machine. There are no horses braying, no wagons creaking, just the soft padding of thousands of feet and the low murmur of men at work. It's an organic, human-powered engine. You realize that if the Tlaxcalans ever managed to cut these supply lines, the flower war would end in 48 hours. But they don't. Why? Because they have their own porters, their own power drinks, and their own scribes, just a few miles away. There's a mutual understanding that the training ground must be kept functional. To attack the porters is to end the game, and neither side is ready for the real war that would follow such a breach of etiquette. As you finish your pinoli, feeling the energy return to your limbs, you look at the empty baskets being stacked for the return trip. Tomorrow, they'll be replaced by full ones. The Empire is a giant that eats maize and breathes obsidian, and you are just one cell in its massive body. The logistics of the Flower War prove that the Triple Alliance isn't just a collection of warriors. It's a sophisticated civilization that has mastered the art of staying ready. You stand up, stretching your sore back, and prepare for the evening's ritual chants. The sun is setting, casting long purple shadows over the crates and jars. You are welfed, your weapon is repaired, and your captures are recorded. The machine has looked after you, and in return, you will continue to be its sharpest edge. The readiness of the Empire isn't just found in the swing of a sword, but in the tireless feet of the men who carry the weight of the world on their foreheads. As the second day of the engagement dawns, the performance aspect of the Flower War transitions into something much more practical. Tactical drills under live fire. This is where the true military value of the xochiyaoyotl reveals itself. You aren't just here to look pretty in feathers. You are here to practice the complex choreography of the calpulli units. In the Aztec military, cohesion is everything. You stand in a line, 3 ranks deep, your shield overlapping with the man to your left. This isn't a suggestion, it's a life-saving necessity. When the Tlaxcalan slingers begin their opening barrage, the sound of stones clattering against the woven chimale shields is like a hailstorm on a tin roof. You probably wouldn't survive a modern hail of bullets, but here, the discipline of the turtle formation, a mainstream historical fact, is what keeps the line from crumbling before the melee even starts. You feel the push and pull of the unit. Your commander, a veteran with a back banner shaped like a golden butterfly, signals with a high-pitched bone whistle. Instantly, the front rank drops back, and the second rank steps forward through the gaps. This rotation is a sophisticated tactical maneuver that keeps fresh arms at the front and tired warriors in the rear. It's a rhythmic, pulsing movement that requires months of practice. Historians have noted that the Flower Wars were the only place where these maneuvers could be tested against a resisting enemy without the catastrophic risk of a total rout. It's a lethal laboratory. If a unit fumbles the rotation here, they get a bruise and a lecture. If they fumbled it during a real conquest in the jungle, they'd all be dead. A quirky, fringe tidbit about these drills involves the shouting matches. While you are rotating ranks, you are encouraged to scream specific rhythmic chants. This isn't just for intimidation, it acts as a metronome. By shouting in unison, the unit synchronizes its breathing and its footwork. It's essentially a 15th century version of left, 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 right. You might find it funny to think of 1,000 warriors singing their way through a battle, but when that synchronized stomp hits the earth, the vibration is enough to make a novice opponent drop their weapon in sheer primal terror. Historians still argue whether these tactical rotations were actually efficient, or if they were a byproduct of the Aztec obsession with individual turns at glory. Some scholars suggest that the constant switching of ranks actually hindered the momentum of a charge. However, from your perspective, in the middle of the swarm, the rotation feels like a godsend. It gives you a 30-second window to wipe the blood and dust out of your eyes and check the resin on your The Flower War allows the High Command to see which Kalpuli units are working like a well-oiled machine, and which ones are drifting out of alignment. You watch as the runner's younger boys who have UNT yet earned their armor dart between the legs of the fighting men. Their job is to retrieve spent xochiyaoyotl darts and slingstones. It's a dangerous high-speed game of fetch that serves as their own entry-level training. They are learning to navigate the chaos of a battlefield, to stay low, and to ignore the terrifying sounds of bone-hitting wood. Between empires, these boys are the future. By the time they are old enough to carry a shield, they will already be battle-hardened without ever having swung a blade. The live fire aspect becomes literal as the Tlaxcalans launch flaming arrows into the dry grass at the edges of the field. This is a tactical test. Can you maintain your formation while the world around you is literally catching fire? You feel the heat on your shins, but you don't break rank. To do so would be to fail the drill. The Flower War pushes you to the absolute limit of your psychological endurance. You are being tempered, much like the obsidian flakes in your sword. The fire, the noise, and the constant threat of capture are the hammers that shape you into an elite instrument of the Triple Alliance. You notice how the commanders use the terrain of the cleared field. Even though the land is mostly flat, there are subtle dips and rises. You see an eagle warrior lead a feigned retreat, drawing a group of overeager Tlaxcalans into a low-lying area where your hidden flankers can suddenly emerge. This is a classic Aztec tactic, and the Flower War is the perfect place to perfect the timing. If you pull back too fast, the enemy gets suspicious. Too slow, and you actually get overrun. It's all about the sweet spot of deception. There's a strange, grim beauty to seeing 500 men move as one. When the whistle blows for a pivot, the entire line swings like a gate, catching the Tlaxcalan charge on the corner and funneling them into a killing zone of clubs and wrestling. You realize that the individual prowess we talked about earlier is nothing without this collective discipline. The Flower War turns 1,000 flowers into a single, thorny hedge that no enemy can easily penetrate. It's a masterclass in unit cohesion that ensures the Empire's borders remain secure. As the sun starts to bake the dust into a fine crust on your skin, you feel a deep sense of connection to the men around you. You aren't just neighbors anymore. You are a single organism. You know the exact way the man to your left shifts his weight before he strikes, and you know to cover his ribs when he does. This battlefield intuition is something that cannot be taught in a city plaza. It can only be forged here under the sun, amidst the falling of the flowers. The drill continues until the shadows grow long. Your muscles are past the point of fatigue, moving now on pure muscle memory. The conch sounds, signaling the end of the day's tactical exercises. You drop your shield, your arms shaking, and look at the Tlaxcalans doing the same. They've learned how to counter your rotation. You've learned how to bait their chargers. Both empires have just leveled up. You walk back toward the camp, knowing that while no land was won today, The army you belong to is infinitely more dangerous than it was at sunrise. As you settle into the camp for the night, the firelight flickers against the faces of the men you helped secure earlier today, bringing you face-to-face with the psychology of the captive. In any other culture, a prisoner of war is a figure of pity or a source of labor, but here, the vibe is unsettlingly different. You look at a Tlaxcala noble sitting near the central fire. He isn't weeping or pleading for his life. Instead, he sits with a straight back, his expression one of grim, almost haughty, acceptance. This is a mainstream historical fact of Mesoamerican warfare. Being captured in a flower war was seen by many as a sacred promotion. You were no longer just a man. You were now a Tayamik, a god captive, the physical bridge between the earthly realm and the divine. You probably wouldn't survive the mental gymnastics required to view your own impending demise as a career highlight. But for these warriors, it was the ultimate good death. To die of old age or disease was considered a tragedia sooty death that led to the dark, damp underworld of Mictlan. But to be captured in the field of flowers and later offered to the sun, that was a VIP pass to the solar paradise, where you would spend eternity accompanying the sun on its daily journey. You see your captive looking at the stars, and you realize he isn't thinking about the home he left behind. He's thinking about his legacy. He has fulfilled his purpose as a warrior, and in his mind, he has won a victory that transcends the physical. A quirky, fringe tidbit about this psychological state is the familial language used between the captor and the captive. In a bizarre display of ritual bonding, the Aztec warrior would often address his captive as beloved son, while the captive would respond by calling him honored father. It's a Stockholm syndrome codified into state religion. You find yourself offering your captive a choice piece of venison, not out of pity, but out of a genuine, ritualized respect. You are his midwife into the next life. This strange intimacy ensured that captives rarely tried to escape. To flee would be to reject the divine honor and brand oneself a coward for all eternity. Historians still argue whether this willing captive narrative was a universal truth or a piece of elite propaganda designed to keep the system running smoothly. Surely, among the commoners who didn't share the same religious fervor as the nobility, there must have been moments of pure, unadulterated terror. You see a younger Tlaxcalan captive in the shadows, his eyes wide and hands trembling, and you realize the sacred promotion might be a harder sell for someone who has spent 20 years being told the sun will stop if he does die. The psychological readiness of the empire relied on everyone from the general to the victim playing their part in the script. The captive's mindset also served a practical military purpose. It prevented the total war desperation that leads to scorched earth tactics. If you know that being captured isn't the end of your honor, you are less likely to fight to the point of suicidal madness, which in turn keeps the training ground from becoming a slaughterhouse. It's a psychological safety valve. By framing capture as a sacred transition, the Aztec and Tlaxcalan empires managed to keep the casualty rates among the elite at a level that allowed for perpetual war. The readiness of the soldier is maintained because the fear of the unknown is replaced by the certainty of a ritualized fate. You watch the priests move among the captives, painting their skin with white chalk and adorning them with down feathers. They are being deified in real time. This psychological transformation is fascinating to behold. The man you wrestled in the dirt 12 hours ago is now being treated like a living icon. He is given fine clothes and sometimes even wives to accompany him during his final days in Tenochtitlan. It's a gilded cage of the highest order. You realize that the flower war doesn't just train your muscles, it trains your soul to accept a reality where individual life is secondary to cosmic balance. There is a scholarly phrase often used here, the economy of the soul. The Aztecs believed the gods had sacrificed themselves to create the world, and therefore, humans owed a blood debt to keep it running. The flower war was the most efficient way to pay that debt. Your captive is the currency. As you watch him eat, you feel a sense of profound responsibility. You have to get him back to the capital in prime condition. If he dies of a mundane infection or a broken leg on the march back, his value as a sacred messenger is diminished. You are essentially a high-stakes courier of the divine. This psychology also influenced how you fought. You weren't fueled by hatred, but by a sense of sacred duty. When you strike a man, you aren't trying to destroy an other. You are trying to harvest a brother. It creates a battlefield atmosphere that is intensely personal, yet strangely detached. You probably would unsurvive the cognitive dissonance of loving the person you are about to hand over to the knife. But it's the very foundation of the Aztec world. It's what allowed them to maintain a military state for centuries without collapsing into a cycle of pure, mindless vendetta. As the night deepens, the captives begin to sing. Their voices are steady, haunting, and filled with a strange kind of triumph. They are singing flower songs, poems about the brevity of life and the beauty of a warrior's death. On Earth, we live only a moment, they chant. You listen, leaning against your shield, feeling the weight of the past and the future pressing down on you. The readiness of the Empire isn't just about the strength of your arm, it's about the strength of your belief. You close your eyes, the captive's song lulling you toward sleep. You've done your job today. You've secured the flowers, and you've treated them with the honor the gods demand. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, and it will do so because of the work you've done here in the dust. The psychology of the captive is the glue that holds this violent, beautiful system together, ensuring that, even in defeat, the warrior finds a way to serve the Empire. As you prepare for the third day of engagement, you look across the shimmering heat of the valley floor at your eternal sparring partner, the Tlaxcalans. To any outside observer, this would look like a death match between bitter rivals. But you know better. Tlaxcala isn't an enemy to be wiped out. It is a necessary foil. Tlaxcala is a landlocked mountain confederacy that has been systematically surrounded by the Aztec Empire, but they aren't conquered. They are preserved in a state of permanent hostility. This is a mainstream historical fact that highlights the sheer strategic coldness of the Triple Alliance. Tlaxcala was essentially a human farm and a training academy. By keeping them blockaded and cutting off their access to salt and luxury goods, the Aztecs ensured that Tlaxcalans were always desperate enough to fight, but never strong enough to win. You probably wouldn't survive a relationship with a neighbor who only lets you exist so they can practice hitting you. But the Tlaxcalans have adapted with a ferocity that commands your respect. Because they have no access to the sea or the trade routes of the south, they have become masters of making do with what they have. They are leaner, meaner, and arguably more motivated than the average Aztec commoner. Between empires, this creates a Red Queen effect who have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place. Their constant resistance forces the Aztec military to innovate. If the Tlaxcalans develop a new way to use their shields, your generals have to counter it within a month, or the next flower war will be a disaster. A quirky fringe tidbit about this relationship is that during times of peace, or rather, the scheduled breaks between flower wars, nobles from Tlaxcala would sometimes be invited to Tenochtitlan for festivals. Imagine the social awkwardness. You, re-sitting at a banquet, eating turkey and cacao, with a man who 3 months ago tried to take your head off with a piece of volcanic glass, and 3 months from now, will try again. This frenemy status was a fundamental part of the political landscape. It allowed for a strange kind of cultural exchange. You know their battle cries, and they know your drum patterns. You are two sides of the same bloody coin, locked in a dance that defines both your civilizations. Historians still argue whether the Tlaxcalans were truly trapped or if they were playing a much longer game of survival. Some scholars suggest that the Tlaxcalans leaned into the flower war system because it was the only thing keeping the Aztecs from committing to a total war of annihilation. By providing the Triple Alliance with the flowers they needed for their gods and the training they needed for their troops, Tlaxcala bought its continued existence year after year. It's a high-stakes protection racket where the currency is human life. You see a Tlaxcalan commander across the field, his orange and white banners snapping in the wind. And you wonder if he hates you, or if he simply views you as a necessary part of the ecosystem. This relationship served as the ultimate readiness check. If the Tlaxcalans ever showed signs of true weakness, the Aztecs would likely have stepped up the pressure to ensure the sparring partner didn't go soft. You notice that the Tlaxcalan equipment today is surprisingly high quality, despite the blockade. This suggests they've been successful in their own raids or have found back channels for trade. For you, this is good news. A weak opponent is a poor teacher. You need them to be fast, strong, and clever, so that when you face the real threats on the imperial frontiers, the wilder tribes or the wealthy coastal cities, you are operating at a level they can even comprehend. The Tlaxcalans also provided a psychological service to the Aztec state. By having a perpetual enemy so close to home, The emperor could always point to a tangible threat to justify the heavy taxation and the constant military mobilization. It's a classic political move. Keep the people focused on the threat across the border, so they do UN to focus on the problems at home. You are a tool of that policy. Every time you march toward Tlaxcala, you are reinforcing the narrative that the empire is the only thing standing between the citizens and the barbarian hordes. There's a specific scholarly phrase used for this: asymmetric symbiosis. You need them to fight, and they need you to, well, not kill them all. This creates a battlefield environment that is incredibly familiar. You recognize the specific featherwork of certain Tlaxcalan houses. You know that the warriors from the Tizitlan district tend to favor the spear, while the Ocoto men are masters of the grapple. It's like a professional sports league where the teams have played each other for 50 years straight. You aren't fighting strangers. You're fighting the very people who made you the warrior you are today. As the Tlaxcalan line begins to advance, they let out a synchronized whistle that chills the air. It's a sound you've heard in your dreams. You settle into your stance, feeling the familiar weight of your shield. You think about the crocodile dung from the old tales again. At least that was a simple problem with a simple solution. This relationship is far more complex. It's a mixture of genuine hatred, ritual necessity, and mutual admiration. You are the elite of the world because they are the elite of the world, and today, you get to prove it once more. You watch as a Tlaxcalan youth, likely on his first flower war, charges a bit too far ahead of his line. He's eager, just like you were. He's looking for his first captive, his first taste of glory. You see your own veteran commander signal a flanking maneuver. The sparring partner is about to give the boy a very hard lesson in the readiness of the Triple Alliance. It's a brutal school, but as the two lines collide in a spray of dust and feathers, you realize it's the only school that matters in the Valley of Mexico. The Tlaxcalans are the whetstone, and you are the blade. Without them, you would be blunt, rusted, and useless. As the first obsidian teeth bite into wood, you embrace the chaos of the eternal match. Between empires, there is no room for a final victory, only for the continued refinement of the art of war. You lock eyes with a Tlaxcalan warrior, your own age, and in that moment of shared lethal purpose, you understand that you are both exactly where you are supposed to be. As the midday sun bakes the valley, you take a moment to breathe, leaning on your xochiyaoyotl and observing the assessing the flower war's economy. It's easy to look at this field and see only blood and feathers, but if you look closer, you see a massive redistribution of wealth. In the Aztec world, currency isn't just gold or cocoa beans, it's prestige, and prestige has a very real market value. Every captive you take represents a bounty paid out by the state. When you return to Tenochtitlan, the emperor won't just give you a pat on the back. You'll receive land grants exemptions from the labor tax and the right to wear brand-name luxury goods that are strictly regulated by sumptuary laws. You probably wouldn't survive a modern economy where your tax bracket is determined by how many people you can tackle in a park, but here, it's the most transparent system in the world. A mainstream historical fact that drives this economy is the tribute system. The Aztec Empire was built on the flow of goods from the periphery to the center. However, the flower war states like Tlaxcala pay tribute in corn or feathers. They paid in the form of elite military training and sacrificial victims. Historians call this a prestige economy. By participating in these wars, the Triple Alliance maintained a high value for its warrior class. If everyone could wear jade and feathers, those items would lose their worth. By making them unlockable only through the high-stakes risk of the flower war, the state ensures that luxury remains a powerful motivator for the youth. A quirky, fringe tidbit about this economic side is the ransoming that occasionally happened. While the goal was usually sacrifice, there are accounts suggesting that high-ranking nobles captured in these skirmishes could sometimes be traded back for a literal king's ransom of salt, specialized textiles, or rare obsidian. It's a bit like a medieval knight being held for gold. It reminds you that even in a sacred war, there's always a ledger being kept. You see a veteran warrior carefully binding the wounds of a particularly well-dressed Tlaxcalan, and you realize he isn't being kind. He's protecting an investment. A dead captive is a lost paycheck. A living noble is a villa in the countryside. Historians still argue whether the flower wars were an economic drain that eventually weakened the empire or a vital job creation program for an overpopulated nobility. Some argue that by pouring so much resource into a war that didn't expand borders, the Aztecs were wasting their capital. But as you look at the ranks of young men around you, all of them eager, disciplined, and fiercely loyal to the system, you see the return on investment. The Flower War creates a social stability that gold cannot buy. It keeps the upper management of the empire focused on a meritocratic goal rather than internal squabbles. You notice the merchants, the Pochteca, hovering on the outskirts of the camp. They are the ones who truly understand the assessing part of this section. They are waiting to buy the spoils of the worth of broken shields that can be scavenged for feathers, the captured jewelry, and the rights to certain slaves. The Flower War is a trade show for the military-industrial complex of the 15th century. Every blow struck on this field echoes in the marketplaces of Tlatelolco. If the Aztecs are winning, the price of obsidian rises. If the Tlaxcalans put up a good fight, the demand for better quilted armor spikes. Between empires, this economy of readiness ensures that everyone stays sharp. The Tlaxcalans, despite their blockade, have developed a black market economy fueled by the Flower Wars. They trade their martial prowess for the chance to seize Aztec goods during the fights. You've seen Tlaxcalans wearing Aztec-style jewelry they clearly didn't buy. It's a violent exchange of technology and wealth. You realize that the readiness of the empire isn't just about physical fitness, it's about financial incentive. The state has made it more profitable to be a brave soldier than a lazy noble. The cost of the war is also calculated in human life, which the Aztecs viewed as a renewable resource. To the modern eye, the loss of thousands of elite youths seems like a demographic catastrophe. But the Aztec state was designed for high turnover. The social ladder we discussed earlier ensures there is always a fresh supply of ambitious young men ready to fill the gaps left by the harvest. It's a high-velocity economy where the currency is constantly being minted in the Tlaxcala schools and spent on the sacrificial stone. You adjust your grip on your weapon, feeling the weight of the gold bands on your arms prizes from a previous engagement. You are a walking bank account of imperial favor. Every scar on your body is a deposit in your reputation. The Flower War ensures that the wealth of the empire doesn't just sit in the emperor's vaults. It circulates through the hands of the people who are willing to bleed for it. It's a brutal, efficient, and deeply religious form of capitalism that keeps the military readiness of the state at its peak. As you look toward the next line of Tlaxcalan challengers, you aren't just seeing enemies, you're seeing opportunities for growth. You think back to the crocodile dung sunscreen if only it had been a commodity you could trade. No, the real wealth here is in the struggle itself. The Flower War turns the most destructive human impulse into a productive economic engine. It's a paradox that has kept your people in power for a century. You prepare to charge, the rhythmic clashing of shields sounding like the counting of coins. The readiness of the empire is secure as long as the price of glory remains high. You take a deep breath, the dusty air tasting of sweat and gold, and step forward to make your next investment in the future of the Triple Alliance. The flowers are in bloom, and for a man with a sharp blade and a steady heart, the harvest is looking very profitable indeed. As you re-enter the fray, you realize you aren't just being watched by generals and rival warriors. You are being shadowed by the priestly oversight of combat. Moving through the swirling dust and the rhythmic clatter of obsidian, you see them, the Teopics. These aren't the soft, cloistered monks of your imagination. These priests are battle-hardened veterans of the spirit, their hair matted with sacrificial blood, and their bodies draped in dark, heavy robes that somehow don't hinder their movement. They don't carry xochiyaoyotls, but they carry something far more intimidating: the accountability of the cosmos. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Flower Wars were supervised by the religious elite to ensure that the violence didn't devolve into profane killing. Every drop of blood spilled on this field is considered a prayer, and like any prayer, it has to be recited correctly. You probably wouldn't survive a workplace where a spiritual auditor is literally walking behind you while you work, checking to see if your vibe is correct for the ritual. But for you, the presence of the priest is a comfort. They are the ones who determine the balance of the fight. If they see one side becoming too dominant, or if the rules of engagement we talked about are being ignored, they step in. They are the conduits for the god's will. Between empires, this oversight ensured that the training ground remained a sacred space. If a warrior kills an opponent in a fit of rage, rather than with the cool, detached precision of a ritualist, the priest is there to record the sin. You see a priest stop a young warrior who is about to deliver a finishing blow to a downed Tlaxcalan, whispering a stern reminder of the day's quota. A quirky fringe tidbit about these combat priests is their role as divine photographers. While they didn't have cameras, they possessed an incredible mnemonic ability to record the events of the day for the later creation of codices. They would watch the specific way a noble fell or the exact moment a banner was captured, memorizing the flow of the flower. Some accounts suggest they even used small, portable ritual mirrors made of polished pyrite to trap the light of the sun and direct it toward particularly valiant fighters, a sort of ancient spotlight for the gods' favorite performers. You find yourself standing a bit straighter when you see the sun glint off a priest's mirror in your direction. It's the ultimate "I see you" from the divine. Historians still argue whether the priests were actually the ones running the war, or if they were merely the religious rubber stamp for the military's needs. Some scholars point to the xochiyaoyotl, the snake woman who was actually a male high official, as the one who truly balanced the scales between the spiritual and the strategic. Standing here, you see the priest lean in to whisper to an eagle commander. It doesn't look like a prayer. It looks like a tactical adjustment. The readiness of the empire depends on this synergy. A military without the priests would be a pack of wild dogs. A priesthood without the military would be a group of dreamers with no way to feed their gods. You notice that the priests are also the medics of the soul. When a warrior is captured, the priests are the first to approach. They don't offer medical aid in the way you expect, no bandages or stitches, but they offer incense and oratory. They begin the process of deifying the captive immediately, transforming him from a loser into a sacred messenger. This oversight prevents the camp from becoming a place of despair, by framing everything through the lens of ritual necessity. The priests keep the morale of both the victors and the vanquished at a high, steady hum. They ensure the psychology of the captive remains intact, protecting the readiness of the entire system. The balance the priests seek is both literal and metaphorical. They watch the sun's position with obsessive detail. The flower war is a clock. If the fighting goes on too long, it risks disrupting the schedule of the universe. If it ends too soon, the gods might feel cheated. You see a priest holding a specialized sun shadow device, a simple stick and circle in the dirt, and you realize that your entire life is currently being measured by the movement of a shadow. It's a strange, humbling thought. You aren't just fighting for your kelpuli, you are fighting to keep the shadow moving at the correct speed. Between empires, the priestly oversight also served as a neutral diplomatic channel, because the priests of Tenochtitlan and Tlaxcala often shared the same theological training and spoke the same ritual language. They could communicate, even when the generals were at each other's throats. They were the ones who negotiated the halftimes and the ends of play. You see a Tlaxcalan priest and an Aztec priest meet at the edge of the field, exchanging small bundles of herbs. They aren't enemies, they are colleagues in the great work of the world. This ensures the eternal sparring doesn't accidentally end in a total war that neither side's priests want to see. You feel the weight of the priest's gaze as you engage a Tlaxcalan noble. You make sure your movements are clean. You avoid the dirty tricks, the eye gouging, or the desperate biting that might happen in a real brawl. You are an artist under the eye of a critic. The flower war turns you into a sacred athlete. This level of discipline is exactly what the Triple Alliance needs. If you can stay cool and ritualistic while a man is trying to bash your brains in, you can handle anything the frontier tribes can throw at you. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the priests begin a low, melodic chant that signals the transition from the field to the altar. The tone of the day changes instantly. The kinetic energy of the battle is gathered up by the priests and funneled toward the evening ceremonies. You follow them back to the staging area, feeling like a part of a grand procession. The oversight hasn't just managed the war, it has elevated it. You aren't just a soldier who survived a skirmish. You are a participant in a cosmic maintenance project. You look at the priests one last time as they begin to paint the faces of the newly captured. Their hands are steady, their eyes focused on a reality you can only dimly perceive. The readiness of the empire is a spiritual state as much as a physical one. And as long as the priests are there to balance the scales, the flowers will continue to fall exactly as they should. You take a final sip of water, the cool liquid a gift from the gods the priests serve, and prepare for a night of sacred reflection before the sun calls you back to the bloom. As the dust begins to settle on the third afternoon, you take a moment to inspect your gear. noticing the subtle weaponry evolution in the Flower War. In a standard campaign of conquest, your goal is to penetrate armor and end a life as efficiently as possible. But here, in the laboratory of the xochiyaoyotl, the design philosophy shifts toward containment and control. You look at your xochiyaoyotl and realize that the spacing of the obsidian blades is slightly wider than the models used for Total War. This isn't a defect, it's a design choice. The wider gaps allow the weapon to act more like a serrated saw, designed to cause painful, debilitating flesh wounds that encourage an opponent to surrender, rather than deep, lethal strikes that might accidentally sever an artery. It's a specialized bit of non-lethal or lethal tech. You probably wouldn't survive a modern police training course with this thing, but for the Aztec Readiness Program, it's a surgical tool. A mainstream historical fact that highlights this evolution is the development of the topaz. This is a thrusting spear with a broad paddle-shaped head edged with obsidian. In the Flower Wars, these were used like long-distance scalpels. A skilled warrior could use the broad edge to hook an enemy's shield, or to deliver a shallow cut to the thigh from 6 feet away, keeping the opponent at bay while wearing down their will to fight. Historians have noted that the sheer variety of Aztec polearms increased during the height of the Flower War era as the need for specialized capture tools grew. You see a veteran nearby practicing a sweep-hand-pin move with his spear, treating it more like a wrestler's limb than a killing pike. A quirky, fringed tidbit about this evolution is the use of the smogpot, or the chillabomb. While not a handheld weapon like a sword, the Aztecs experimented with ceramic jars filled with burning charcoal and dried habanero peppers. When thrown into the enemy line, the resulting cloud of capsaicin smoke would cause uncontrollable coughing and tearing eyes. Essentially 15th century pepper spray. It's the ultimate non-lethal tactical advantage. Imagine trying to maintain your sacred dignity while your lungs feel like they're on fire. Historians still argue whether these were used frequently in Flower Wars or reserved for real sieges. But the psychological threat of a stinkpot landing at your feet was enough to make even the bravest Tlaxcalan reconsider his life choices. The evolution of armor was equally specialized. You touch the thick salt-brined cotton of your xochiyaoyotl. Between empires, this armor became thicker and more tailored over time. Unlike the bulky one-sissiphitzel vests of the earlier eras, the elite warriors now wear suits that are articulated at the joints. You see a jaguar warrior whose suit covers him from neck to ankle, a body glove of protection that allows for maximum mobility during the grappling phase of the fight. This evolution shows that the readiness of the empire wasn't just about training the man, but about refining the shell. The more protected you are, the more risks you can take to secure that live captive. You also notice the capture cords tied to your belt. These aren't just simple ropes. They are weighted at the ends with small stones, almost like a miniature version of a South American bola. You've seen warriors use these to entangle an opponent's legs during a pursuit. It's a specialized evolution born entirely from the requirements of the Flower War. In a real war, you'd just throw a spear in the back of a fleeing enemy. Here, you have to catch them like a prized animal. This forced innovation in tethers and traps is a unique feature of the Mesoamerican military-industrial complex. The weaponry also reflects the social ladder we talked about earlier. You see a high-ranking noble carrying a xochiyaoyotl made of rare tropical hardwood, with blades of green obsidian from the Pachuca mines. This isn't just a better weapon, it's a status symbol that signals his readiness to lead. The evolution of the weapon became tied to the evolution of the soldier's rank. Between empires, the quality of your volcanic glass told the enemy exactly who they were dealing with. If you see the sun glinting off that specific green sheen, you know you're facing a man who has already captured dozens of flowers. There's a scholarly debate phrase often used here, the technological plateau. Some argue that the Aztec focus on ritualized capture prevented them from developing metal weapons or more efficient killing tools. But looking at your gear, you see it differently. You didn't fail to develop steel. You succeeded in perfecting obsidian for a very specific, complex, social, and religious need. Your weapons aren't primitive, they are highly specialized instruments for a high-stakes perpetual drill. If your goal is to bring a man home, alive and breathing, a steel sword is actually a step backward. As you clean the dust from your xochiyaoyotl, you realize that every piece of your kit is a response to the Flower War system. The weapons have been shaped by the rules, and the rules have been shaped by the weapons. It's a closed loop of innovation that ensures you are the most skilled capture a specialist in the world. This is the readiness that the Spanish would later find so baffling. They were fighting for destruction while you were fighting for the harvest. You watch a young warrior struggling to reset a blade in his wooden sword. A veteran stops to show him how to angle the obsidian so it catches the light but does unshatter on impact. This transfer of technology is part of the training ground. The Flower War ensures that the secrets of the xochiyaoyotl aren't lost between generations. You are part of a living tradition of engineering, where the software of your training is perfectly matched to the hardware in your hand. The sun is sinking now, and the glint off the obsidian teeth in the camp is like a field of cold black stars. You feel a sense of pride in your specialized tools. They aren't meant for a simple slaughter. They are meant for the beautiful, terrible work of the gods. As you wrap your capture cords neatly for the night, you know that your gear is as ready as your spirit. Tomorrow, you will test the evolution of your weaponry against the evolution of the Tlaxcalan shield, and the readiness of the empire will once again be proven in the falling of the flowers. The evening camp is finally quiet, and as you sit by the flickering coals, you realize your training isn't just about the strength of your swing, but the fuel in your belly, the dietary habits of the jaguar warrior. Between empires, a soldier is only as good as his endurance. And the Aztec military diet was a masterpiece of pre-industrial nutritional science. You reach into your pack for a small, dense cake made of amaranth seeds mixed with honey and agave sap. This isn't just a treat, it's a power bar designed for sustained energy. You probably wouldn't survive a modern diet of purely maize and insects, but here, every bite is a calculated step toward military readiness. A mainstream historical fact that often gets overlooked is the role of the humble xochiyaoyotl, or amaranth. This grain was so central to your readiness that the Spanish would later try to ban it entirely to weaken your people. It's packed with protein and lysine, giving you the muscular-repairing nutrients needed after a day of wrestling Tlaxcala. You see a veteran warrior near you mixing a paste of xochiyaoyotl ground chia seeds and water. Historians have noted that Aztec runners and warriors could travel incredible distances on just a handful of chia, which absorbs 12 times its weight in water, keeping you hydrated during the dry heat of the Flower War. A quirky fringe tidbit that might make your modern stomach turn is the energy-boosting consumption of xochiyaoyotl, often called Mexican caviar. These are the eggs of aquatic insects harvested from the lakes. They are incredibly high in protein and were dried into cakes for long-distance marches. You eat them without a second thought. They taste a bit like shrimp and provide the nitrogen your muscles crave. There is a rumor among the younger boys that if you eat the heart of a particularly brave quail before battle, you'll inherit its speed. You might laugh at the superstition, but the placebo effect is a powerful tool in the readiness of a warrior's mind. Historians still argue whether the cannibalism mentioned in Spanish accounts was a dietary necessity or a strictly ritualized act limited to the elite. Standing in the camp, you see the reality is far more complex. The harvest of the Flower War isn't just about the glory, it is about the literal and figurative consumption of the enemy's strength. However, for the average soldier like you, the diet is overwhelmingly plant-based and high-carb. You survive on the three sisters, maize, beans, and squash. This trio provides a complete protein profile that keeps you lean and agile. You aren't bulky like a modern bodybuilder. You are wiry like a marathon runner who can also bench press a small tree. You watch the field cooks preparing a large pot of atole, a warm maize gruel. They flavored it with a bit of chili, and cacatha ladder being a luxury usually reserved for the nobility but distributed. To the troops during the Flower Wars to sharpen their focus, cacao contains theobromine, a stimulant that keeps you alert during the long, cold night watches. Between empires, the distribution of these luxury calories acts as a morale booster. It tells you that the state values your body enough to fuel it with the best the valley has to offer. There is a scholarly debate phrase often used here: nutritional sovereignty. Some argue that the Aztec diet was so superior to the European one of the time that it was the primary reason for your physical dominance. You feel it in your own limbs. While a Spanish soldier might be sluggish from heavy salted meats and wheat, you feel light and clean. Your digestive system isn't fighting your armor. The readiness of the empire is found in the efficiency of its metabolism. You are a biological machine tuned for the high-altitude atmosphere of the Mexican highlands. You notice how the warriors avoid heavy meals right before a skirmish. You've been taught to keep your stomach tight. A full belly makes you slow, and a slow warrior is a captive warrior. You see a group of eagle warriors chewing on a specific type of root provided by the priests. SA, mild analgesic, that numbs the minor aches from today's bruises. It's all part of the dietary readiness. You aren't just eating for hunger, you are eating for performance. The logistics of this diet are mind-boggling. To keep thousands of men fueled on amaranth and chia requires a massive agricultural infrastructure. You think about the chinampas, the floating gardens of Tenochtitlan, which are currently working overtime to produce the crops being sent to the front. The flour war is the ultimate test of that garden. If the supply of amaranth fails, the flour of the army wilts. But as you scrape the last of the honeyed grain from your teeth, you feel the familiar hum of energy returning to your blood. The sun has fully vanished now, and the camp smells of wood smoke and toasted corn. You take one last sip of chia water, feeling it coat your throat. Your body is ready for tomorrow because it has been built from the very soil of the empire you serve. The readiness of the jaguar warrior is a product of what he eats as much as how he trains. You settle onto your mat, the nutrient-dense calories already beginning their work of repairing your tissues, preparing you for the moment the first horn blows and the cycle of the flower begins anew. The fourth day brings a shift in the air, a heavy stillness that tests your spirit as much as your grip. You are now weathering the storm of attrition, while the first few days were fueled by the electric spark of adrenaline and the hunger for social promotion. The middle of a flower war is a grueling marathon of the soul. Your joints ache with a dull, persistent throb, and the salt-brined cotton of your armor has begun to chafe against your sun-scorched skin. This is a mainstream historical fact that modern observers often overlook. The flower wars were always short. Afternoon skirmishes, they could drag on for weeks, becoming a war of nerves where the primary goal was to see which side's readiness would crack first under the weight of physical and mental exhaustion. You probably wouldn't survive a fortnight of sleeping on a thin reed mat, waking up at dawn to wrestle men who want to turn you into a divine messenger, and then doing it all again on a diet of toasted corn. But for the Aztec warrior, this attrition is the ultimate filter. It's easy to be a jaguar when you're fresh. It's much harder when your fingers are swollen and your voice is hoarse from shouting challenges. Between empires, the flower war served as a stress test for the entire military hierarchy. If a commander loses his cool or a unit begins to lag during the 10th day of a stalemate, the high command takes note. They aren't just looking for the strongest, they're looking for the most durable. A quirky fringe tidbit about this phase is the shared exhaustion that sometimes led to temporary truces. There are legends of warriors from both sides sitting down near a stream during the heat of the day, too tired to lift their shields and simply nodding to one another in mutual acknowledgement of the misery. One account even suggests they would trade medicinal tobacco, a potent, wild variety too, numbing the pain of their bruised ribs. It's a moment of profound, gritty humanity in the middle of a cosmic ritual. You find yourself sharing a patch of shade with a Tlaxcalan you've been sparring with for 3 days. You don't speak, but you both understand that the flower is currently wilting for everyone. Historians still argue whether this attrition was a deliberate slow bleed strategy by the Aztecs or a sign that the two sides were too evenly matched for a decisive ritual outcome. Some scholars believe the Triple Alliance used these long engagements to drain the Tlaxcalan labor force. While your army is massive and can rotate fresh men from the capital, the Tlaxcalans are a smaller population. Every day they spend in the field of flowers is a day their farmers are in the fields of maize. You realize that the readiness of the empire is as much about your numbers as it is about your skill. You are part of an ocean, and you are trying to erode a mountain. You look at your xochiyaoyotl, the wood is dented, and several obsidian flakes have shattered into jagged stumps. You don't have the energy to run back to the weapon medics today, so you use a small piece of bone to pry out the splinters. This is the grind. The flower war isn't just about the falling of the flowers. It's about the staying power of the stems. You see a younger warrior weeping silently in the shadows of a maguey plant, his spirit broken by the relentless cycle of violence and heat. You don't mock him. You've been there. You simply hand him a piece of dried venison and point him back toward the line. Survival here is a communal effort. The psychological toll is amplified by the ritualized rules we discussed. You can just end the war by burning the enemy's camp or poisoning their wells. You have to keep fighting the right way, day after day, until the priests decide the gods are satisfied. This creates a unique form of combat fatigue where the stress comes from the lack of a traditional resolution. There is no territory to take, no flag to plant, there is only the next encounter. This develops a level of mental toughness that is terrifying to your enemies on the frontier. If you can endure a 3-week flower war, a standard campaign of conquest feels like a vacation. Between empires, the attrition also serves as a diplomatic barometer. You can feel the temperature of the Tlaxcalan resistance. Are they still shouting their lineage with pride, or are their cries becoming desperate and thin? You notice the Tlaxcalan line is starting to look ragged, their feathers are broken, and their banners are drooping in the wind. This is the readiness check in action. Your own unit, backed by the superior logistics of Tenochtitlan, is still receiving fresh tortillas and clean water. The contrast in your physical states is a message. The Triple Alliance is inexhaustible. There is a scholarly phrase for this, the theater of endurance. Every day you stand in that line, even if you don't take a captive, you are performing a feat of imperial strength. You are showing the world that the Aztec heart doesn't skip a beat. You feel a strange, grim pride in your own exhaustion. Your blisters have turned to calluses, and your mind has entered a state of flow where the pain is just background noise, like the hum of a fan. You have moved beyond the fear of the first day and the ambition of the second into the pure, cold reality of the professional warrior. As the sun sets on another indecisive day, you watch the priests lighting the sacred fires. The smoke rises straight into the breathless air. You realize that weathering the storm is what truly makes a jaguar warrior. Anyone can be brave for an hour, but it takes a special kind of person to be brave for a month of stalemates. The readiness of the empire is built on this foundation of stubborn, relentless persistence. You lay down on your mat, your muscles twitching with fatigue, but your spirit is steady. Tomorrow, the sun will demand more blood, and you will be there to provide it. The flowers may be tired, and the field may be dusty, but the cycle continues. You close your eyes, the sounds of the camp fading into the distance, and prepare yourself for the next round of the world's most demanding endurance test. As you rise for the 5th day, you aren't just putting on clothes, you are donning a psychological weapon. You are now exploring the role of performance and costume. In the world of the Flower War, looking the part is half the battle. You spend an hour carefully lashing a massive back banner, a xochiyaoyotl. It's a frame of light cane, covered in the iridescent green feathers of the quetzal and the deep turquoise of the cotinga. It towers 3 feet above your head, vibrating with every step you take. You probably wouldn't survive a modern covert operation wearing a neon sign that says, "Here I am." But in the xochiyaoyotl, being invisible is a coward's errand. You want to be seen. You want to be the most vibrant thing on the field, a living flame that draws the enemy's eye and freezes their heart. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. Aztec military ranks were strictly color-coded and highly visual. Your costume tells everyone exactly how many men you've captured and, by extension, exactly how dangerous you are. A warrior in a plain tunic is a novice. A warrior draped in the spotted skin of a jaguar is a predator who has survived the readiness test at least 4 times. These costumes weren't just for vanity. They were a form of biological signaling, much like the bright colors of a venomous snake. When a Tlaxcalan sees a wave of yellow-feathered parrot warriors charging toward them, the visual impact is designed to trigger an instinctive flight response. It's a sensory overload of color, sound, and movement. A quirky fringe tidbit about these elaborate outfits is the snare factor. While the feathers and banners were beautiful, they were also incredibly practical for the captor. Historians have noted that the tall back banners served as handles during the chaotic wrestling matches. If a noble tried to slip away, you could literally grab his 3-foot butterfly wings and yank him back into the fray. You have to be careful though. Your own banner is just as much a liability. You've learned to move your head and shoulders in a specific weaving motion to keep your plumage from getting tangled in the low branches of the scrub oak. You probably didn't think you'd need a costume management class to be a soldier, but here, it's a vital survival skill. Historians still argue whether the sheer weight and wind resistance of these costumes actually hindered the Aztecs during their final battles with the Spanish. Standing here in the wind, you can feel the quetzal feathers catching the breeze like a sail, threatening to pull you off balance. Some scholars suggest that the Aztec obsession with theatrical warfare made them vulnerable to an enemy that did uncare about the beauty of the kill. But within the context of the Flower War, the costume is the point. It transforms you from a mortal man into a teotl, a divine force. The readiness of the empire is maintained by this transformation. If you feel like a jaguar, you will fight like a jaguar. You watch an eagle warrior adjust his helmet, a massive wooden raptor's head with a gaping beak. His face is visible only through the bird's throat. It's a terrifying piece of psychological art. When he screams his war cry, the sound is amplified by the hollow wood, turning a human shout into a supernatural shriek. This is performance at its most lethal. You realize that the Flower War is a dance where the costume dictates the choreography. You move with a deliberate high-stepping grace, showing off the bells tied to your ankles. The rhythmic jingling adds to the sonic landscape, a constant reminder to the enemy that the flowers are approaching. Between empires, the costume also acted as a diplomatic uniform. During the Flower War, you can identify the high-ranking officers of the opposing side from across the field. This allows for the ritual targeting we discussed. You do want to waste your energy capturing a commoner when you can see a Tlaxcala noble wearing the heron headdress. The costumes ensure that the prestige economy of the war stays organized. It's like a color-coded map of the social ladder moving across the dust. You spot a Tlaxcalan with a particularly rare arrangement of eagle down on his shield and decide that he is your goal for the day. The performance extends to your movements. You've been trained in the metatolistli, the sacred dances that mimic combat. You don't just run at the enemy. You advance with a series of stylized leaps and parries. This isn't just for show. The jumping makes it harder for a slinger to lead their shot, and the constant movement keeps your muscles from locking up in the heat. The readiness of the warrior is a blend of athlete and actor. If you can maintain the performance for 6 hours under the sun, your conditioning is undeniably elite. You notice the wardrobe assistant's younger boys, who follow the nobles to adjust their feathers and tighten their sandal straps during breaks. It's a bizarre sight in the middle of a war zone, but it reinforces the idea that this is a curated event. You are a representative of your city's aesthetic and military might. To have a messy headdress is to show a lack of readiness that reflects poorly on your entire kalpuli. You take a moment to smooth down a ruffled feather on your arm, a small act of vanity that is actually a profound act of discipline. There is a scholarly phrase often used here, the aesthetic of violence. The Aztecs believed that because the world was inherently unstable, it had to be met with a structured, beautiful response. The Flower War is the peak of that philosophy. You are a masterpiece of silketon, obsidian, and plumage, walking into a storm of dust. You feel the weight of the ancestors' eyes on your back, judging the quality of your display. The costume isn't a mask, it's a revelation of your true status in the cosmic order. As the sun catches the gold leaf on your shield, creating a blinding flash that momentarily stuns a Tlaxcalan youth, you realize the costume has done its work. You didn't even have to swing your blade. The performance did the heavy lifting for you. You step forward, your quetzal feathers shimmering like a green waterfall, and prepare to add another flower to your collection. The readiness of the empire is a spectacle, and today, you are the lead actor in the greatest show on Earth. As the sun begins to dip behind the jagged peaks of the Sierra Madre, a strange, quiet stillness descends upon the valley, leading you into the diplomatic backchannels mid-battle. You might think that a war, even a ritual, when is a state of total communication breakdown. But in the xochiyaoyotl, the dialogue never truly stops. You watch as a high-ranking Aztec commander, draped in the skin of a jaguar, signals for a temporary cessation of hostilities near a small grove of cedar trees. A Tlaxcalan noble, equally resplendent in his heron-feathered regalia, approaches him. They don't draw weapons. Instead, they sit. You probably wouldn't survive a modern war where the generals decide to have a mid-skirmish picnic with the opposition. But here, these backchannels are the grease that keeps the readiness machine from grinding to a halt. A mainstream historical fact that underscores this is the prearranged nature of the Flower Wars. These weren't chaotic invasions, they were negotiated agreements. Historians have found evidence that the dates, locations, and even the number of participants were often hammered out weeks in advance by diplomatic envoys. Standing here, watching these two enemies share a ceramic jar of chilled cacao, you realize that the battle is only one layer of the relationship. They are discussing the logistics of the sacred checking, if both sides have enough sacrificial candidates to satisfy their respective temple schedules for the upcoming month. Between empires, this communication ensures that the harvest is balanced and that neither side is being pushed toward a point of actual unmanageable collapse. A quirky fringe tidbit about these mid-battle meetings is the exchange of complementary intelligence. It was unheard of for a commander to warn his opponent about a particularly reckless young warrior on his own side who was following the rules, or to point out a section of the field that had become dangerously muddy and There are even accounts of warriors trading local delicacies. Aztec salt for Tlaxcalan mountain herbs, right? They're in the middle of the combat zone. It's a surreal display of professional courtesy. You find yourself wondering if the Tlaxcalan you wrestled earlier is currently complaining about your grip. Strength to his commanding officer over a smoke. Historians still argue whether these back channels were a sign of decadence among the elite or a brilliant strategic tool for regional stability. Some scholars suggest that the Aztec and Tlaxcalan nobilities were so culturally intertwined that they viewed the commoners in their ranks as mere expendables in a game only the elites truly understood. But as you watch the commander return to your line, his face grim and focused once more, you see the readiness in his eyes. The diplomacy isn't a sign of peace. It's a way to ensure the war remains useful. By talking to the enemy, you learn their temper, their shortages, and their resolve. It's intelligence gathering disguised as etiquette. You notice how the news from the back channel filters down through the ranks. The word spreads. Tomorrow, the fight moves to the eastern ridge. This isn't a leak, it's the plan. The Flower War is a choreographed test of strength, and you need to know where to stand to be part of the formation. Between empires, this predictability allows for the tactical drills we practiced earlier to be executed at the highest possible level. If you know where the enemy will be, you can focus entirely on the how of the fight, the technique, the grace, and the capture, other than the messy guesswork of a surprise ambush. There is also a social safety net aspect to these diplomatic channels. You hear rumors of a Tlaxcalan noble who was captured 3 years ago and was actually paroled back to his city after his family paid a massive tribute in fine textiles. This kind of gentleman's agreement keeps the elite from being wiped out in a single generation. It ensures that there is always a sparring partner of sufficient quality available for the next year's games. You realize that the readiness of the empire depends on the survival of its best enemies. If you kill all the great Tlaxcalan generals today, who will train your sons tomorrow? This mid-battle diplomacy also serves the priests. You see a scribe darting between the two commanders, recording the names of the nobles who have distinguished themselves. This data is shared. The empires keep a joint record of valor. It's a bizarre form of shared history-making. The Flower War is the only war where the winner and the loser agree on exactly what happened. This prevents the kind of bitter, long-term resentment that leads to total war. By maintaining a common narrative through these back channels, the empires keep the conflict within the boundaries of the ritual. As the meeting ends and the commanders return to their respective camps, you feel a sense of strange professional clarity. You aren't fighting a monster, you're fighting a colleague who happens to be wearing different feathers. The readiness of the Triple Alliance is sharpened by this mutual respect. You know that if you are captured, there is a protocol, there is a way to die, and there is a way to be remembered, all because someone took the time to talk in the middle of the killing field. You tighten the straps on your chimali, the diplomacy phase closing as the night fires are lit. You think about that shared cacao, bitterness of the bean, and the sweetness of the honey. It's a perfect metaphor for the Flower War itself, a mixture of brutal necessity and refined culture. Tomorrow, the dialogue will continue, but it will be spoken with the edge of an obsidian blade. You settle down to sleep, the low murmur of the sentries providing a steady rhythm. The back channels have done their work. The stage is set for the next act of the ritual. The readiness of the empire is not just a physical state, but a diplomatic one, a constant, vibrating tension that keeps everyone alert, everyone fed, and everyone precisely where the gods want them to be. As the moon hangs high over the valley, your thoughts drift away from the obsidian and the dust. Traveling back toward the city-state, you left behind the world of gender and the home front. It's easy to get lost in the hypermasculine readiness of the Jaguar warriors, but you realize that the Flower War is an engine that runs on the labor and resilience of those who never step onto the battlefield. While you are here proving your worth, the women of the Calpulli are engaged in their own form of high-stakes readiness. In the Aztec worldview, giving birth was the female equivalent of capturing a warrior. A woman who died in childbirth was honored as a fallen soldier. A Huejotzingo believed to escort the sun from its zenith to the horizon. You probably wouldn't survive the intense social pressure of a society where every domestic act is framed as a cosmic battle. But here, it's the heartbeat of the empire. A mainstream historical fact that defines this era is the domestic industry of textiles. Every feather on your back and every layer of your salt-cart armor was produced by hand, primarily by women. In the Triple Alliance, weaving was not just a chore, it was a political and economic weapon. To maintain a perpetual state of war, the empire required an endless supply of tribute cloth and specialized military tunics. Historians have noted that as the flower wars escalated in the 15th century, the demand for high-quality textiles skyrocketed. You see your own xochiyaoyotl and realize it represents hundreds of hours of spinning, dyeing, and quilting. Without the industrial readiness of the home front, the army would be fighting in rags within a month. A quirky fringe tidbit about the home front is the ritualized waiting performed by the wives and mothers of the warriors. While you were in the field, it was common for the women back home to observe specific fasts or to sweep the house in a particular direction to guide your spirit safely through the combat. There are even accounts of proxy battles held in the markets, where women would engage in ceremonial shouting matches or competitive weaving to generate the spiritual energy you need to secure a captive. You might find it funny to think that your success depends on how well someone back home is sweeping a floor, but in a world of balanced forces, every action has an equal and opposite reaction in the spirit realm. Historians still argue whether the flower war system actually empowered women by increasing the value of their labor, or if it further marginalized them by centering all social prestige on male combat. Some scholars point out that because men were so frequently away at the training grounds, women took on significant roles in managing the household economies and the local markets. You think of your own mother, who manages the family's cacao stores and negotiates with the Pachteca merchants. She is as sharp and disciplined as any commander you've served under. The readiness of the empire isn't just a masculine trait, it's a total societal commitment that crosses gender lines. You notice the presence of the female healers, the xochiyaoyotl, who have traveled with the army's baggage train. These women are the masters of herbalism and bone setting, while the priests handle the soul of the captive, the xochiyaoyotl handle the engine of the warrior. They use a mixture of obsidian blade surgery and complex pharmacology using plants, like tizapatl for inflammation, to keep the troops from being permanently sidelined by minor injuries. Their readiness is what allows the flower war to be a sustainable training ground rather than a uni-off slaughter. They are the ones who ensure that a wounded flower can bloom again next season. Between empires, the home front also acts as the cultural repository. While you are busy wrestling Tlaxcalans, the women are the ones teaching the children the songs of the ancestors and the strict etiquette of the state. They are the primary educators of the next generation of readiness. You realize that if the women of Tenochtitlan ever stopped believing in the necessity of the flower war, the entire system would collapse overnight. The social ladder only works because the mothers and wives agree that a man in a feathered tunic is worth more than a man in plain cotton. There is a scholarly phrase often used here: complementary duality. The Aztecs didn't see the home and the battlefield as opposites, but as two halves of a whole. Your violence is balanced by their creation. Your harvesting of lives is balanced by their weaving of the social fabric. This duality ensures that the empire doesn't become a hollow military shell. It remains a living, breathing civilization. You look at the small jade bead tied into your hair, a gift from a sister or a wife, and you feel the pull of the home front. It's a reminder of why you are staying ready. You aren't just fighting for the sun, you're fighting for the order of the home. As you prepare for the next day's rotation, you feel a renewed sense of respect for the silent half of the empire. The flower war is a spectacular performance, but the stage was built by the women back in the valley. Their discipline in the face of your absence is the foundation of your courage. You think about the smell of fresh tortillas and the rhythmic sound of the loom, and you realize those are the sounds of readiness. The night air is cool, and you can almost imagine you hear the distant hum of the city. You aren't alone on this field. You are backed by a million hands that have spun the thread, ground the maize, and whispered the prayers that keep you standing. The readiness of the empire is a web, woven tight and strong, connecting the highest pyramid to the humblest hearth. You close your eyes, the jade bead cool against your skin. Tomorrow, you will step back into the masculine world of the obsidian blade, but you will do so with the strength of the home front behind you. The flowers fall, but the loom continues to turn, ensuring that for every warrior who is lost, the empire is already weaving the future of the next one. As you stand in the pre-dawn mist, watching your unit perform a series of synchronized stretches and weapon drills, you can't help but draw a mental bridge to the future, comparing Aztec training to modern drills. It is easy to view these ritual wars as ancient relics, but from your perspective, they feel remarkably like what a 2-1 S-century soldier would call large-scale combat operations, LSCO, training, or a high-intensity wargame. In both worlds, the goal is to create a simulated environment that is so close to the real thing that the soldier's nervous system can tell the difference. You probably wouldn't survive a modern urban warfare simulation with its flashbangs and blank rounds, but the Aztec readiness philosophy is surprisingly familiar. If you sweat in peace, you don't bleed as much in war. A mainstream historical fact that links these eras is the use of force-on-force training. Modern militaries spend millions of dollars on laser tag systems like Miles to simulate the stress of an enemy who actually shoots back. For the Aztecs, the Flower War was the Miles gear, but with much higher stakes. Historians have noted that the Flower Wars provided the Aztec Triple Alliance with a permanent opposing force pair in the Tlaxcalans. This allowed for the testing of new tactical doctrines and equipment under realistic conditions. You aren't just hitting a straw dummy, you are hitting a man who is actively trying to tackle you. This creates a feedback loop of competence that no dry drill can ever replicate. A quirky fringe tidbit about this comparison is the after-action review. In modern drills, officers sit down and deconstruct what went wrong. The Aztecs did this through the use of oral historians and the priests we met earlier. After a flower war, the veterans would gather the young warriors and critique their performance. There are accounts of elders miming the mistakes of a novice, showing how a sloppy foot placement led to a near capture with the same biting sarcasm of a modern drill sergeant. You find yourself cringing as a veteran points out that your shield work yesterday was as floppy as a wet tortilla. Some things, it seems, never change across the centuries. Historians still argue whether the Flower War system was a pure training exercise or if the religious requirements eventually corrupted the military utility. Some scholars suggest that the Aztec focus on capture made them overtrained for a specific type of fight, leaving them unable to adapt when the rules changed. But as you look at your comrades, you see the benefits of this overtraining. You possess a level of situational awareness. The OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act, as modern theorists call it, that is off the charts. You can read the muscle tension in an opponent's shoulder from 20 paces. You are a finely tuned instrument of observation and reaction. The readiness of the empire also mirrors modern total force concepts. In a modern state, readiness involves the logistics of the civilian sector, the health of the economy, and the morale of the citizenry. The Flower War touches all these bases. It tests the home front we just discussed, the logistics of the porters, and the economy of the prestige system. It is a Holyoke government exercise. You realize that the Flower War isn't just a military drill, it's an imperial audit. It's a way for the emperor to check if the pipes are still working, if the people are still loyal, and if the gods are still on the payroll. You notice the certification aspect of the war. In a modern army, you earn tabs or badges for completing specific schools, like Ranger or Airborne. In the Flower War, your tab is the physical captive you bring home. Until you've secured a prisoner, you aren't misqualified military occupational specialty for the elite units. This meritocratic certification ensures that your middle management, the captains and lieutenants of the Calpulli, are not political appointees, but proven combat leaders. Between empires, this prevents the kind of institutional rot that destroys great powers from the inside out. There is a scholarly debate phrase often used here: the ritualization of proficiency. Some argue that by turning war into a ritual, the Aztecs made it safer. Others argue they made it more dangerous by making it constant. From your position in the ranks, it feels like both. The ritual provides the structure that keeps the training organized, but the proficiency is what keeps you alive. You aren't just a sacred athlete, you are a professional soldier whose office happens to be a field of marigolds and obsidian. The readiness of the Aztec warrior is also psychological, much like modern resiliency training, by exposing you to the sights, sounds, and smells of a real battle on a regular basis. The empire desensitizes you to the fog of war. When a Tlaxcalan whistle blows, you don't panic. Your heart rate stays steady because you've heard it 100 times before. You have inoculated yourself against fear. This psychological readiness is perhaps the most modern thing about the Aztec military machine. As you begin your morning maneuvers, the rhythmic clashing of shields sounds like a heartbeat. You feel a strange kinship with every soldier who has ever stood in a simulated kill zone, from the Roman legions at the Palist to the paratroopers at Fort Johnson. You are all part of the same human effort to master the chaos of conflict before it begins. The Flower War is your training ground, and the Empire is the beneficiary of your excellence. You take your place in the line, the sun finally breaking over the mountains. The comparison to the modern world fades as the very ancient, very real weight of your shield settles on your arm. You are ready, not because you want to be, but because the system has made it impossible for you to be anything else. The flowers are waiting to be picked, and the drill is about to go live once again. As the sun begins its final arc across the sky on the 6th day, the kinetic energy of the training ground shifts into its most solemn and terrifying phase, the toll of the Tlaxcala. While the Flower War provides the practice, the ritual of the flaying of men provides the purpose. You watch as the long columns of captives, the flowers you worked so hard to harvest, begin their march toward the great temple of Tenochtitlan. This isn't just a victory parade, it is the processing of the empire's cosmic debt. This is a mainstream historical fact that often creates a barrier of misunderstanding between the modern world and your own. To the Aztec mind, the human body is a vessel of divine energy, and the Flower War is the method by which that energy is gathered and redistributed. You probably wouldn't survive the emotional weight of seeing the men you shared water with yesterday being prepared for the altar. But for you, this is the logical conclusion of readiness. A quirky fringe tidbit about this aftermath is the sharing of the skin. During the festival of Tlaxcala, the warriors who captured the victims would sometimes wear the flayed skins of their captives for 20 days. This wasn't out of a ghoulish sense of trophies, but a deep, spiritual mimicry of the god Xochiyaoyotl, the flayed one, who shed his skin to give life to the corn. Historians note that the skin was believed to have curative properties, and people would touch the warriors to receive a blessing of vitality. You see a veteran warrior now draped in the pale, drying skin of a Tlaxcalan noble, and you don't see a monster. You see a man who has become a living seed, a symbol of the empire's rebirth and continued readiness. Historians still argue whether these massive rituals were a form of state-sponsored terrorism designed to keep the vassal states in line, or a genuine expression of religious devotion. Some scholars suggest that the Tlaxcala served as a terrifying demonstration of the Aztec readiness to use ultimate force. If the Triple Alliance can do this to their honored sparring partners, imagine what they would do to a truly rebellious city. From your perspective, standing at the base of the pyramid, it feels like a bit of both. It is a moment where the theater of war meets the theater of the state, creating a psychological impact that ripples all the way to the coast and the southern jungles. You notice the role of the families in this toll. The captor does not eat the flesh of his own captive. To do so would be like eating his own son, as we discussed in the psychology of the captive. Instead, the harvest is shared among the community. This communal participation in the results of the Flower War reinforces the social bonds of the Calpulli. Everyone has a stake in your success on the battlefield because everyone participates in the spiritual nutrition that follows. This is the readiness of the community. The Flower War ensures that the entire population remains focused on the central mission of the state, the maintenance of the universe through sacrifice. The toll also includes a meticulous accounting of the gear. You see priests and officials collecting the broken weapons and blood-stained armor from the field. Nothing is wasted. The readiness of the empire depends on its ability to recycle its resources. The feathers are steamed and cleaned, the obsidian is salvaged and knapped into smaller tools. The cotton is washed and requilted. The Flower War is a cycle that feeds itself. You realize that the toll isn't just a loss of life, it's a renewal of the empire's material and spiritual inventory. Between empires, this ritual aftermath serves as the final grade for the training exercise. The quality of the captives, their health, their noble lineage, and the bravery they show on the sacrificial stone reflects directly on the readiness of the army that captured them. If the Tlaxcalans go to their deaths with a shout of defiance, it proves they were a worthy opponent, which in turn proves that your training was high level. You watch a Tlaxcalan noble ascend the steps with a steady gait, and you feel a surge of professional pride. You didn't just capture a man, you captured a hero, and that makes you a hero. There is a scholarly debate phrase often used here: the ecology of the sacred. Some argue that the flower wars and the subsequent sacrifices were a way to manage population levels, or to compensate for protein deficiencies. But standing in the shadow of the temple, that feels like a cold, modern this is about meaning. The readiness of the Aztec warrior is the readiness to be a part of something larger than oneself. The toll is the price of admission to a world where human action actually matters on a cosmic scale. You aren't just a soldier, you are a priest of the edge, a harvester of the sun. As the drums of the Tlaxcala begin to beat a deep, booming sound that you can feel in your marrow, you realize that the unlocking of the past is complete. The traditions of the ancestors have been fulfilled once again. The flowers have fallen, and the earth has been watered. You look at your own hands, still stained with the dust of the field, and you feel a profound sense of peace. The empire is ready. The sun will rise tomorrow. The gods are satisfied, and the military machine is primed for another season. The toll is heavy, yes, but it is the weight that keeps the empire grounded. Without this final processing, the flower war would just be a pointless game. The ritual turns the violence into value. You take a final breath of the incense-heavy air. The scent of copal and marigolds thicken your lungs, and prepare to return to your home, a transformed man. You have seen the readiness of the empire at its most extreme, and you have survived to tell the tale. As you stand on the outskirts of the ritual grounds, watching the long shadows of the late afternoon stretch across the valley, you notice a group of figures that don't fit the rhythm of your world. They are few in number, palace-skinned, and encased in a strange, gray-scaled metal that glints with a cold light. This is the moment of misinterpretations by the Spanish eye. You see them watching the aftermath of the flower war with expressions of pure, unadulterated horror. They don't see a sophisticated military training exercise or a necessary cosmic maintenance project. They see a barbaric massacre. They see a waste of human life. You probably wouldn't survive the collision of these two worldviews, mostly because the Spanish bring a concept of total war that makes your ritualized readiness look like a garden party. A mainstream historical fact that defines this tragic intersection is the Spanish belief that the Aztecs were cowards because they tried to capture rather than kill. To a soldier from Castile, a man who lunges for your legs instead of your throat is a man who doesn't know how to fight. They didn't understand that for you, killing was a failure of technique. Historians have noted that during the first encounters, the Spanish were baffled by the way Aztec warriors would pull their blows or stop a charge to secure a noble prisoner. They interpreted your readiness as a lack of lethal intent, failing to realize that you were simply playing by a set of rules they had unbothered to read. A quirky fringe tidbit about this cultural clash involves the Spanish horses. When the Aztecs first saw these deer without horns, they tried to apply the logic of the flower war to them. There are accounts of warriors attempting to capture horses with ropes and nets, treating them as high-ranking noble targets that should be brought back alive for sacrifice. You can imagine the confusion on both sides, the Aztec warrior trying to gently restrain the beast, and the Spanish rider using the opportunity to run the warrior through with a steel lance. Your obsession with the purity of the harvest became a lethal vulnerability when faced with an enemy that only cared about the body count. Historians still argue whether the flower war system was the primary reason for the Aztec collapse or if it was simply one factor among many. Some scholars argue that the Aztec military was so over-specialized in capture that they had physically lost the ability to conduct a war of annihilation. Standing here, watching the Spanish look at your priests with disgust, you realize that the readiness of the empire was built for a specific Mesoamerican ecosystem. You are a shark in a coral reef, perfectly adapted for your environment, but the Spanish are like a sudden drop in the water temperature. The very things that made you elect your discipline, your ritualized etiquette, your focus on prestige are the things that make you inefficient in the face of European total war. You notice how the Spanish interpret the psychology of the captive we discussed earlier. When they saw Tlaxcalan nobles walking calmly to the altar, they didn't see sacred messengers. They saw a brainwashed population that needed saving. They didn't see the social ladder or the prestige economy. They saw a devil-worshipping cult. Between empires, this misunderstanding served as a moral justification for the conquest. By labeling your training grounds as slaughterhouses, the Spanish could ignore the sophisticated logistics, the dietary science, and the tactical brilliance of the Triple Alliance. The misinterpretation also went the other way. You look at the Spanish and see men with no honor. They kill from a distance with fire sticks, harquebuses. They don't look you in the eye when they strike. They target the home front and the logistics instead of the flowers. To you, the Spanish are the ones who are unready. They are sloppy, they are greedy for gold rather than glory, and they break the ritualized rules without a second thought. You find yourself wondering how a civilization could survive without a flower war to keep its soul sharp. In your mind, the Spanish aren't an army. They are a plague that doesn't understand the balance of the world. There is a scholarly phrase often used here, the clash of military ontologies. This is a fancy way of saying that you and the Spanish do not even agree on what a war is. For you, war is a conversation with the gods. For them, war is a method of land acquisition and religious conversion. You realize that the readiness you spent your life cultivating is a shield made of feathers against an enemy that fights with lead and steel. The Flower War has prepared you to fight the Tlaxcalans forever. But it has unprepared you to fight a man who wants to destroy the very concept of the Tlaxcalans. You watch as a Spanish friar makes the sign of the cross toward the great temple. He looks at the toll being processed and sees only sin. He does unsee the amaranth cakes that fueled the march or the weaponry evolution that led to the serrated obsidian. He doesn't see the priestly oversight that kept the violence sacred. He sees a world that needs to be unlocked and then discarded. The irony is that the Spanish would eventually use the Tlaxcalans, your eternal sparring partners, to bring you down. They would exploit the politics of perpetual conflict by offering the Tlaxcalans a chance at a final victory that the ritual system had always denied them. As the sun sets, casting a blood-red light over the gram-metal armor of the strangers, you feel a chill that has nothing to do with the mountain air. The readiness of the empire is about to be tested in a way the ancestors never imagined. The Flower War has been a beautiful, lethal dance, but the music is changing. You look at your xochiyaoyotl, the obsidian glinting one last time in the fading light. You are a master of the past, but the future is arriving with the sound of iron and the smell of gunpowder. You turn back toward the city, the sound of the Spanish voices harsh and metallic fading behind you. You have done your duty. You have stayed ready. But as you walk, you can't help but wonder if the harvest of the next season will be something no priest can predict and no warrior can capture. The flowers are still in bloom, but the garden is no longer yours alone. The air in Tenochtitlan has changed. The familiar rhythmic scent of copal and toasted maize is now undercut by the acrid sting of smoke and the metallic tang of an unfamiliar desperation. You are experiencing the breakdown of the ritual system. For generations, the Flower War provided a predictable, sacred pulse to your life, but that pulse is flatlining. The Spanish have not only arrived, they have rewritten the laws of physics as you know them. You probably wouldn't survive the psychological whiplash of realizing that the rules you spent your life mastering are now your greatest liability. When you try to grapple a Spanish soldier to harvest him for the gods, he doesn't struggle for honor. He draws a steel dagger and drives it through the gaps in your salt-cured armor. The readiness of the empire is shattering against an enemy that doesn't want to spar. They want to erase you. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that signals the end of the era, the siege of Tenochtitlan. In this total war scenario, the concept of the Flower War became a ghost. The Tlaxcalans, your eternal sparring partners, have broken the cycle. They realized that the Spanish offered a way out of the managed conflict the Triple Alliance had imposed on them for decades. Instead of sending elite units for a scheduled skirmish, they are now sending tens of thousands of warriors to help the strangers tear down your stone palaces. Historians note that the Tlaxcalans fought with a feral intensity during the conquest, fueled by centuries of being the human farm for your sacrificial needs. The politics of perpetual conflict have backfired with the force of a volcanic eruption. A quirky, fringe tidbit about this breakdown is the failed capture of Hernan Courts. During one of the desperate battles on the causeways, Aztec warriors actually had their hands on the Spanish leader. Instead of killing him instantly, which would have likely ended the invasion, they spent precious minutes trying to drag him away alive for a ritual sacrifice. This ritualized hesitation allowed Spanish soldiers to rush in and rescue him. You find yourself wondering, as you watch the city burn, if the gods truly demanded that capture, or if your own training was simply a cage you couldn't escape. Your readiness to follow the ritual was the very thing that let the greatest prize slip through your fingers. Historians still argue whether the Aztec military could have adapted if given more time. Some scholars believe that by the final months of the siege, the Jaguar and Eagle warriors had begun to abandon the capture-first doctrine, switching to lethal strikes to counter the Spanish steel. But the breakdown was already too deep. The logistics we discussed, the porters, the amaranth cakes, the weapon medics, were all designed for a specific type of hyperstage, low-territory conflict. When the Spanish cut the causeways and blockaded the lake, the readiness of the empire turned into a hunger that ate itself. You aren't fighting for a promotion on the social ladder anymore. You're fighting for a handful of dirty water and a place to stand that is uncovered in smallpox. You notice the priestly oversight is also fracturing. The priests who once managed the balance are now leading desperate charges. Their sacred robes, tattered and stained with the blood of a war they can no longer control. The psychology of the captive has vanished. When the Spanish capture your brothers, they don't treat them as beloved sons or prepare them for a solar paradise. They put them in chains or execute them in the streets. The sacred promotion has been replaced by mundane, terrifying extinction. This loss of meaning is more devastating than the steel blades. Between empires, the flower war was a language. The Spanish have simply cut out your tongue. The weaponry evolution has also hit a wall. Your obsidian is beautiful and sharp, but it shatters against Toledo steel. Your xochiyaoyotl is tough, but it cannot stop a lead ball moving at the speed of sound. You realize that the readiness you cultivated was for a world that no longer exists. You are a master of a dead art. You see a young warrior try to use the sweep hand pin maneuver we practiced, only to be cut down by a cavalryman who doesn't even slow his horse. The theater of endurance has become a theater of the macabre. There is a scholarly phrase for this: tactical dissonance. It's the feeling of doing everything right according to your training and watching it fail spectacularly. You feel it in your bones as you look out over the smoking ruins of the Chinampas. The flowers are no longer falling, they are being uprooted. The unlocking of the past has revealed a future that has no place for the ritualized warrior. The readiness of the empire was a bridge to the gods, but the Spanish have burned the bridge while you were still standing on it. You look at your hands, blackened by the soot of your burning city. The social ladder is gone. The emperor is dead or in chains. The dietary habits are now a desperate search for leather scraps to chew on. The breakdown is total. You realize that the flower war was a luxury of a stable world. It was a game played by giants who thought the walls of their valley were the walls of the universe. Now that the walls have fallen, the readiness feels like a cruel joke. As a final conch shell sounds, not for a ritual start, but for a final, desperate retreat, you feel the last threads of the old world snapping. The flower war system, which maintained military excellence for 100 years, has collapsed in less than 2. You are the last of the flowers, and the frost has arrived. You take up your broken shield, not for glory or the gods, but for the simple, heavy task of surviving one more hour in a world that has forgotten how to speak your name. The readiness of the empire is over. The training ground is a graveyard. And as you step into the shadows of a collapsing temple, you realize that the only thing left to unlock is the silence that follows the end of an era. As you sit amidst the silence of a world that has stopped making sense, you find yourself pondering the scholarly debates on strategic intent. For years, you lived the life of a warrior without questioning the mechanics. But in the stillness of the aftermath, the why becomes as sharp as an obsidian sliver. Historians, both the survivors of your own people and the scholars of the future, still argue whether the flower wars were a brilliant survival strategy or a self-destructive cycle of vanity. Were these wars a masterstroke of managed conflict, or were they a massive strategic trap that the Triple Alliance accidentally built for itself? You probably wouldn't survive a modern academic seminar on hegetonic stability theory, but as you look at the ruins of your city, you are the living evidence of the debate. A mainstream historical fact that fuels this argument is the resource sink theory. Some scholars argue that by pouring the empire's best minds, bodies, and wealth into a war that yielded no new land or tribute, the Aztecs were effectively treading water while their enemies were learning how to drown them. They point to the fact that Tlaxcala, while preserved for training, became a bitter, hardened knot of resistance that eventually acted as the Spanish beachhead. Standing here, you can see the logic. If you had conquered Tlaxcala 100 years ago, instead of gardening it for flowers, would there have been an army left to guide the Spanish to your gates? A quirky fringe tidbit in this scholarly world is the population control hypothesis. Some fringe theorists suggest that the flower wars were a deliberate, albeit gruesome, method of culling the elite. In a society where the nobility was growing exponentially, the flower war provided a way to ensure that only the most capable survived to lead, while the rest were recycled through the sacrificial system. It's a cold, biological view of your life. You find yourself touching the scars on your arm, wondering if your survival was a mark of divine favor or just a statistical anomaly in a state or in population management program. It's a cynical thought, but in the cold light of the conquest, cynicism feels like the only thing that fits. Historians still argue whether the ritual was a mask for realpolitik or vice versa. Did the emperors truly believe they were feeding the sun, or did they just need a convenient excuse to keep the army mobilized? You would think back to the priestly oversight we witnessed. The devotion in their eyes was real, but so was the tactical precision of the drills. Perhaps the genius of the Aztec system was that it didn't distinguish between the two. The readiness was the religion. To be a soldier was to be a devotee, and to be a devotee was to be a weapon. Between empires, this blurred line was your greatest strength until it met an enemy whose only religion was gold and whose only ritual was total victory. There is a scholarly phrase often used here, the paradox of the specialized state. The more perfectly you adapt to one environment, the more vulnerable you are to a change in that environment. The Flower War was the peak of Mesoamerican adaptation. It solved the problem of how to maintain a massive standing army without the constant need for expansion. It provided a meritocratic social ladder and a shared cultural language. But it was a closed system. It was a readiness for a world that ended at the shores of the great waters. You realize that your empire was so ready for the Flower War that it was completely unready for a steel war. You notice the debate also touches on the Tlaxcalan perspective. Were they victims of the system, or were they? Some historians argue that the Tlaxcalans were just as much a part of the flower war industry as the Aztecs. They used the wars to train their own elites and to maintain their own cultural identity in the face of an encroaching superpower. This shared investment in the ritual is what kept it going for so long. You aren't just a victim of your own leaders, you're a victim of a regional agreement that everyone signed in blood. The sparring partner was just as addicted to the game as the champ. This leads to the most painful debate of all, the failure of intelligence. Why did the Pachteka, those elite spies we met, warn the empire that the readiness was insufficient for the outsiders? Some scholars argue that the Aztec worldview was so rigid that even when the spies saw the Spanish firesticks and metal armor, they couldn't process them as a real threat to the cosmic order. They saw them through the lens of the Flower War, as a new kind of noble to be captured and categorized. Your very intelligent Sagaring system was filtered through the unlocking of the past, making it impossible to see the breaking of the future. As the wind whistles through the empty plazas, you feel the weight of these questions. They don't change the fact that your friends are dead and your world is gone. But they offer a strange kind of dignity to the struggle. You weren't just a barbarian fighting in the dirt. You were a participant in one of the most complex, debated, and highly tuned social experiments in human history. The readiness of the empire was a masterpiece of social engineering, even if it was a masterpiece that ultimately couldn't withstand the collision with the unknown. You look at a broken piece of pottery, a fragment of a scene showing a warrior in full Quetzal plumage. He looks proud, focused, and utterly certain of his place in the world. That certainty was your readiness. It was the flower that bloomed in the desert. Even if the scholars conclude that the system was a failure, they cannot deny its beauty or the sheer terrifying scale of its intent. You are the last witness to a dream that was as lethal as it was magnificent. As the smoke of the conquest finally clears, leaving a jagged, unfamiliar horizon, you begin to see the legacy of the flower warrior. The empire as a political entity has crumbled, but the readiness you cultivated hasn't entirely vanished. It has simply changed its shape. You walk through the ruins and see your fellow survivors, men who were once jaguars and eagles, supplying their discipline to a new, grimmer reality. This is a mainstream historical fact that often surprises those who study the fall of Tenochtitlan. The Aztec military tradition did die in 1521. Instead, the Spanish were so impressed by your tactical readiness that they incorporated Aztec units into their own expeditions. You probably wouldn't survive the irony of marching alongside the men who destroyed your home. But for the flower warrior, the readiness is a permanent state of being. You witness the unlocking of the past in the way your traditions have bled into the new world. Historians have noted that the flower wars left a deep mark on the Mexican psyche, evolving into festivals, dances, and even the stylized violence of modern lucha libre. The concept of the mask, the performance, and the social ladder of the ring mirrors the way you used to earn your feathers on the field of elixir. A quirky fringe tidbit about this legacy is the survival of the xochiyaoyotl in the hands of indigenous rebels and hunters for decades after the conquest. Because obsidian was easier to source than iron in the remote mountains, the weaponry evolution of the Flower War continued in the shadows. A secret readiness kept alive by those who refused to let the old ways go cold. Historians still argue whether the Flower Warrior's legacy is one of tragic resilience or forced assimilation. Some scholars point to the Concheros dancers as the ultimate guardians of your spirit. When you see them in the modern Zocalo, their feathered headdresses and rhythmic drumming are a direct echo of the tactical drills under live fire we experienced. They aren't just dancing for tourists, they are maintaining a form of cultural readiness. They are keeping the flower in bloom through the sheer force of memory. You realize that while the empires are gone, the sparring partner dynamic lives on in the way your people negotiate their identity within a global world. You notice the psychology of the captive has transformed into a profound sense of stoicism. The Aztec belief in the brevity of life, that we are all just flowers that bloom and fade, has become a foundational element of Mexican philosophy and art. You see it in the way the new culture celebrates the Day of the Dead, treating the transition from life to afterlife with the same ritualized rules and priestly oversight you once knew. The Flower War taught you how to die with dignity, and that lesson has become a shield for your descendants against the storm of attrition that is history itself. Between empires, the readiness was about the sun. Now, it is about the soul. There is a scholarly debate phrase often used here: the persistence of the Mesoamerican substrate. It's a fancy way of saying that under the surface of the new cathedrals and the Spanish language, the heart of the jaguar still beats. You feel it when you see a young man stand a little straighter, or when you hear the low, haunting blast of a conch shell echoing in a distant valley. The readiness of the empire was so deeply ingrained in the soil that it cannot be paved over. Every time a person seeks to prove their worth through discipline and ritual, they are unlocking your past. The legacy also lives on in the logistics of survival. The indigenous communities that survived the conquest did so by using the same total force concepts, the shared labor, the specialized diets, and the communal accountability that fueled the Flower Wars. Your assessing the economy phase wasn't just about gold, it was about how a community stays strong under pressure. That strength is the reason your language, Nahuatl, is still spoken by millions today. The readiness wasn't just for war, it was for the long game of existence. You look at a young boy playing in the shadows of a fallen statue. He is practicing his footwork, mimicking the leaps of the eagle warriors he's heard about in stories. He doesn't have a feathered banner or an obsidian blade, but he has the performance in his blood. He is the latest flower in a garden that refused to die. You realize that the Flower War served its purpose after all. It didn't save the city, but it saved the people. It gave you a framework for excellence that even a conquest couldn't shatter. The unlocking of the past is not a door that closes. It is a path that continues. You feel a sense of strange, quiet pride. You are part of a system that valued the readiness of the human spirit above all else. As you watch the sunset over the valley, the same sun you once fought to feed, you realize that the flower has unwilted. It has simply gone to seed, waiting for the next season to bloom in ways you can only imagine. You take a final look at your own scarred hands. They are the hands of a warrior, a student of the ritual, and a survivor of the breakdown. You are the bridge between what was and what will be. The legacy of the Flower Warrior is written in your very marrow, a permanent readiness for whatever world comes next. The games may be over, but the spirit of the xochiyaoyotl remains a vibrant, feathered ghost haunting the heart of the world. As the final light of the sixth day begins to bleed into a deep, bruised purple across the Valley of Mexico, you find yourself standing at the edge of the sacred field one last time. This is the sunset over the Valley of Mexico, the moment where the heat of the struggle dissolves into the cool, silent clarity of reflection. You watch the long, tapering shadows of the Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl volcanoes stretch across the landscape like the fingers of the gods reaching out to reclaim the flowers of the day. The rhythmic thumping of the drums has slowed to a heartbeat, and the dust that once choked the air has settled into a fine silver mist. You probably wouldn't survive the transition from the high-octane violence of the morning to this profound, crushing stillness. But for the Aztec warrior, the sunset is the ultimate readiness check. It is the moment you ask, did I justify the sun's journey today? A mainstream historical fact that anchors this moment is the Aztec belief in the fifth sun. You live in an era that you believe is destined to end in a massive, earth-shattering earthquake. Every sunset is a potential permanent darkness. This is why the Flower War's readiness was so vital. By providing the blood and the hearts of the Tlaxcalan sparring partners, you were quite literally buying another 24 hours for humanity. Historians have noted that the Aztecs were a people of divine anxiety. And as you look at the last sliver of orange on the horizon, you feel that anxiety ease into a weary satisfaction. The sun is sinking into the underworld, but because of your labor, you are certain it has the strength to fight its way back to the dawn. A quirky fringe tidbit about these Aztec sunsets involves the evening of the banners. After a flower war, it was custom to burn the broken reed frames of the back banners that were too damaged to repair. The smoke from these prestige bonfires was believed to carry the spirits of the fallen warriors directly into the solar paradise. You see a small plume of white smoke rising from the Tlaxcalan camp across the valley, and realize they are doing the same thing. In the twilight, the fires of your enemies look exactly like your own. Between empires, the darkness is a great leveler. The rules of engagement and the social ladder fall away, leaving only the cold wind and the shared humanity of the exhausted. Historians still argue whether the Aztec obsession with the sunset was a cause or a symptom of their military culture. Did you fight because you feared the dark? Or did you fear the dark because it was the only time you couldn't fight? From your perspective, leaning on your natched xochiyaoyotl, the answer doesn't matter. The readiness of the empire is a cycle, not a destination. You are ready for the night because you have exhausted yourself in the day. You notice how the veterans don't celebrate. They simply endure. They sit in the shadows, cleaning the resin from their hands, their eyes fixed on the stars. They are already unlocking the past of tomorrow, calculating the rotations and the drills for a morning they assume will come. The sunset also marks the final assessing of the economy for the day. You look at your captives, huddled near the temple guards, and you see them not as trophies, but as the interest paid on the empire's existence. The Flower War has fulfilled its strategic intent. Between empires, there is a momentary peace that is deeper than any treaty. The eternal sparring partner is resting, and so are you. You realize that the readiness of the Triple Alliance is not just about the ability to kill, but the ability to sustain a world through ritualized struggle. You are the gardener of the sun, and the day's harvest has been plentiful. There is a scholarly debate phrase for this, the twilight of the ritual. It refers to the idea that the Aztec world was at its most beautiful and complex right before it was extinguished. Standing here, you feel the truth of it. The weaponry, evolution, the dietary habits, the role of performance all. These threads have been woven into a tapestry of unparalleled richness. You are a part of a masterpiece that is painted in the colors of the sunset. The readiness of the empire is a work of art, written in the lives of the flowers and the movement of the stars. As the first stars begin to prick through the velvet sky, you feel the toll of the Tlaxcala settling into your bones. The kinetic energy of the war is gone, replaced by a deep, spiritual gravity. You think back to the crocodile dung and the chillabombs, and they feel like memories from a different life. In the dark, there is no sarcasm, no social ladder, no politics. There is only the breath in your lungs and the cold earth beneath your feet. You have stayed ready. You have played your part in the unlocking of the past. You take one last look toward the east, where the dawn will eventually break. The unlocking of the past has taught you that nothing is permanent, not even the empires of the valley. But the discipline, the courage, and the readiness you found in the flower Warthos are eternal. They are the seeds that will survive the frost of the conquest and the fire of the breakdown. You are a jaguar warrior, and you have seen the sun set on the greatest training ground in history. The world is quieting now, and the frantic pace of the obsidian edge is giving way to the soft, rhythmic breathing of a valley at rest. You can feel the tension leaving your shoulders, as if the heavy feathered banner has finally been lifted, leaving you light and unburdened in the cool mountain air. The images of the Datha vibrant greens of the Quetzal, the dark glint of the volcanic glass, and the steady stomp of 1,000 sandals are beginning to soften and blur like ink in water. You are no longer a weapon of the state. You are a soul in the stillness, safe in the knowledge that the cycle of the world has been honored for one more night. Let the memory of the flowers fade into the velvet dark, and let the warmth of the day's sun linger in your spirit as you drift toward a deep and well-earned peace. The horizon is silent, the stars are steady, and the empire is asleep. Sleep now, for the readiness is complete, and the dawn is a long way off.